And we are live, man. What's good, everybody, man? It's been a little while, Coach, since we've been live, man. Listen, guys, Coach has been busy with spring practice. I've been busy with some family stuff behind the scenes, some transition with SI and everything, man. So we've been slammed these past few weeks, but man, we wanted to get back on here,
Yeah,
chop
yeah,
it up with you guys for a live stream.
yeah, yeah.
And listen, Coach's Corner is always myself, my guy, Coach Fred. Coach, man, how we feeling? I know. Listen, I don't know how. If it, I have a feeling you played a part in this because when I saw the announcement, I was like, "This screams Coach to me." Alcorn somehow turned the spring game into a 5-day event over the course of the week with concerts, with 3-on-3s, with all kind of
uh,
autograph sign-ins, scrimmage games. Coach, talk to me about what's going on down on the reservation throughout the week as we get into Saturday's spring game.
Man, it's I'd like to take full credit, but I can't. Coach Thomas has been phenomenal, man, with wanting to get the engagement up from alumni, former players, students on campus right now. So, we've kind of collabed on a few things. His wife is a part of the student government on campus. So she's been really instrumental in connecting with us and connecting with our kids uh, in the cafeterias, trying to figure out, what the kids want, what they need to get them back involved. And I wasn't expecting all this, but tomorrow we got Rucker Park out here. You know what I mean? 3-on-3. Of course, we can't play in it, but it's going to be a live event, just like you were in the Rucker in New York. So the kids are excited about it, man. They're talking about it. There's a carnival on campus right now. It just somehow lined up with the election week, and you know how election week on college campuses are. So full carnival going on. There's a step show tonight. So this week has been really, really busy. Just got a new president who's been really, really behind us and supportive from the beginning. So, I'd like to take full credit, but I can't. But I'm gonna take some credit with it.
I mean, man, I got to give y'all props because there was a large conversation last year about this, about how do you get more people interested in the spring game and coming out because coach, and this is a question I get thrown at every year, and I try my best to explain it, but fans want to know what they could take away from a spring game. And coach, I know you face this. Listen, it's kind of a double-edged sword if you go one versus ones, because if the defense looks good, everyone's hype about the defense, but man, that offense, man, we got problems. We need a new quarterback, we need a new running back. Our wide receivers aren't catching. But if you go out there and put up 40, man, what are we gonna do defensively? Like, why isn't our defense playing up to par? As a coach, do you like the 1v1 aspect of a spring game, or would you rather go 1v2s? And as a coach as well, I guess a follow-up question after that would be, how do you evaluate your team appropriately in the spring game when the offense might be making plays, but you need your defense to step up, or vice versa?
The spring game is just the conclusion of what we've been through the entirety of the spring. So the evaluations have been done up to the spring game for the most part. So we're 90% done with the evaluations in the spots that we need them. The spring game is just really as Coach Thomas always says, it's WWF before it turned WWE. So it was a little more on the real side, not like it was like when Dusty Rhodes and all those guys. Wrestling was real then, as I tried to get you in all script to understand. But now that it's not, it's more storyline in WWE. It wasn't as storyline in WWF. So it's a control scrimmage, so to speak. The ones that are ones, you're not going to see them very long because we know who they are, what they've done up to this point. Now, there's some guys that's going to get a lot of work because the jury's still out on them. So, for us, it's more one versus two, just because we want to see good on good, but we also factor in the injury side of things and stuff like that. But we like to think that our twos are just as good as some of our ones. So it's really one-on-one, but in a sense, it's one versus two. And I prefer that more so because that's kind of what you get during the year anyway.
Yeah.
Yourself, rarely in a college football practice do the ones practice versus the ones. Same thing professionally. Rarely do ones practice versus ones. So, kind of get the same thing, but if it's up to me, I'd rather go one versus two.
The last thing before we shift into our spring preview, you know, every year, Coach, you've heard this. I mean, what probably I think Gundy up at Oklahoma State was the first person to like publicly come out and really push for this.
I'm a man.
Where,
I'm
yeah,
40.
not that, yeah, a legendary speech on that one, but he believes not one that you can move the FCS game to the spring and have a scrimmage. So Alcorn would go play Southern Miss for their
Yeah.
spring game. Now, obviously, for FCS programs financially and also for upset reasons, I'm not a fan of it either. But I've also heard the idea pitch of doing it kind of like NFL OTAs, where maybe it's not a game and Alcorn still goes plays Vandy to open up the season like you guys are this year, but have an OTA style thing where Alcorn and Southern Miss practice together, Jackson, Mississippi State practice together for a week and kind of get those reps in rather than have an actual spring game and do it where like the Cowboys and Packers will scrimmage together for a week in NFL OTAs. Do either of those ideas as a coach interest you? And do you think that would be more productive than the spring practice model that we currently have?
I don't I don't know how we get to it. You know what I mean? Because he's the head coach of, Okie State. Cedric Thomas is the head coach of Alcorn State. Who's going to run that practice? Who word trumps the others, word? So I don't know how you get past that aspect of it. Travel, um, lodging, meals. That's a huge deal anyway. So I don't know how you get to it. I think it would be fun to actually be able to do that. If you got something that's in close proximity that, money wise, monetarily would make sense. I think that's something that can work, but how would you get to it would be my only, question.
Yeah, I think it will work for certain states. Like obviously, like a situation like Grambling and LA Tech would be
Yeah, they're across the
perfect
interstate
because
from each other.
yeah, like you could just walk to the other campus if like I mean they're close. Same for
You can
like
go home after
LSU.
practice.
Yeah, LSU Southern would make a little bit of sense. Florida State FAMU, stuff like that. I mean, Bethune-Cookman would be tough. I mean, who would be the closest one to them? Really, I mean,
Mm,
like
yeah,
could they could do it with like a Stetson maybe or someone like that, or if they wanted to go down to FIU or FAU, something like that,
Edward
potentially. But
Waters.
yeah, like Jackson would have, you can do Ole Miss or Mississippi State potentially. You guys would, or Southern Miss, and then you guys could have one of the other Mississippi schools. I mean, Texas Southern would have Houston
Right
right
down the
there, I would
street.
assume. PV would have a few options over there in Texas. So, I mean, it would work for some, but like, you know, there are some universities eventually it would be some weird matchups. I mean, even like I wouldn't even be against it. And this is no offense to Valley. Like I'm not saying because like an Ole Miss Valley practice wouldn't interest a lot of people, but maybe like a Valley Delta State. I mean, that would be an interesting OTA, and they play. They've played before. I think the
Yep.
Alabama schools would be perfect. And even if you didn't want to do the Auburn Alabama matchup, there's enough like North Alabama and A&M get together, both up in the North region of Alabama, and then like a Sanford and a
Oh yeah,
Alabama
Sanford's there.
State.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So and even if you wanted to do something where you wanted to come down to Mobile and show your team off, if you're Alabama State or whoever, you can do a South Alabama one. So there's options. Tennessee State would have a lot of options as well, with a lot of an Austin P. You couldn't do a UT Martin because you're in conference, but Austin P would be an out of conference team.
Right down the
Um,
street from
Ch-
Middle. Are they close
yes,
to the middle of Vandy? I can't remember. Um,
yeah, Vandy would be right there too. So I mean, you could do a Vandy, or if you wanted to go across the state, you could do a Chattanooga. as well. Chattanooga's in a different conference right there as well. The MEAC would have a lot of good options because listen, North Carolina, South Carolina have so many teams right there. Delaware State would be a little bit more difficult given that they play Delaware every year, but the travel in the Northeast isn't as like stringent, I would say, as everything. The only reason I coach taking it out of the HBC realm that I can't see it working. Who do the like those some of those West Coast like who does Montana State and North Dakota State and those teams
Idaho.
play? Yeah, like you would have to leave the state for that. I mean, unless you were going to play like an NAIA or a JUCO or something like that. But because those are just some ideas I've heard. I don't know what the model will be. And then also two FCS coaches with the transfer portal don't want to put
We ain't
themselves
doing
with the
it.
because coach, you know what would happen? A guy
Oh,
like
it'd be so
Malachi Bailey would go out there and be killing the left tackle. And that coach from, whatever top school in Mississippi is going to be on the
before
phone
he
with
got on the
him.
bus.
Exactly. Like, hey, man, like we can offer you this much money, and it's up to them not to take it. But at the same time, you don't want to put yourself in that position. So I that's the only reason. That's probably the biggest reason why I would say no. But coach, shifting into the purpose of this episode, HBCU spring preview, man. Spring practices, spring games are starting across the country this weekend. There's a handful of games, including yourselves. Coach, I want to go through the biggest questions for, each HBCU team today, get into some storylines that me and you texted about earlier. Let's start here. Let's start in the West. And we'll knock out some of the programs that people are probably less interested in right now. But let's head to UAPB. Do you have a question for them? Like, what are you looking for from them going into spring practice?
If I'm there, I'm looking to see how they come off of that 36-6 comeback. What's still left there, and can they build momentum off of that big time win, comeback win versus Texas Southern? And I think their biggest question mark has got to be who's going to play quarterback. They play 6 guys or something like that. Some crazy amount of guys at that position. And I don't care what level you're on, if you don't have a guy that can pull the trigger, you are basically, unless you're in days of old back in Oklahoma, where he just turns around and hands it to a racehorse back there 60 times a game, you're going to be tough. It's going to be tough for you. So for me, to see if they can build off that momentum and who's going to actually play quarterback and how long are they going to allow him to play quarterback?
Yeah, I think mine is just, is the energy that Alonzo Hampton brought year one, like does that energy he brought year one carry over into year two? Because let's be honest, coach, it is hard to win at a program like UAPB. It's hard to win at a program like a Valley. It's been hard to win at Bethune-Cookman since moving to the SWAC. It's hard to energize those fan bases, hard to energize those programs. Coach, you've seen the media day interviews. Alonzo Hampton acts like he's coaching at the best program in the country, and he feels like any given Saturday he's going in to win. You saw the first half performance they put up against, what was it, Tulsa last year when they were only down like by 7 going into or late in the first half. He has an energy about him, a confidence about him that I just wonder, has that paid off on the recruiting trail? Has that paid off for the guys coming back for year two? Do they believe that they can win? And that's the biggest thing. I think there's too many positional needs right now for me looking at the roster to just kind of narrow down on one thing. They need a lot, to be honest with you. But I want to see if that team can keep that attitude it had, because any given week early in the season, it felt like they could give someone a run for their money. But I felt like that momentum died off up until that last week when they had that big comeback. And let's be honest, Texas Southern was drained by that game. Just in terms, I mean, you think of all, like, coach, you've been there with a team where if you lose, let's say 2, 3, 4, one possession games on like a pick in the end zone, like they did against Jackson, where they missed a 2-point conversion, and then they lose to Southern like they did, and then you lose your starting quarterback week 1 of the season, and then you got Ladarius Owens, you get a big win against Alcorn, but you can't carry that over. I felt like that team was just mentally checked out and exhausted by the time it got to that game last week. Your coach, all in the news cycle, about to be fired. that your AD's lying, telling players that he's fired. Then you hear in the news that he's not fired. And it's just, there was a lot going on there. Can UAPB build on that? And for Texas Southern, moving to them, we might as well move on to them, is Jace Wilson has to step up. And then two, how do you replace that running back room? Because Coach, Ladarius Owens and Ja'Cory Howard were
No deal.
workhorses in the backfield.
No
How do
deal.
you replace them? And then I'm worried about that offensive staff. You lose your OC to North Carolina A&T. You lose your offensive line coach to Jackson. Do you have, and then Quay Davis hits the portal this spring. You're probably best wide receiver returning. Do they have any weapons on offense? I need to see what Texas Southern looks like offensively with Jace, and does he have any weapons surrounding him that could carry him into a year two development? I'll be honest, Texas Southern worries me a little bit, Coach. I mean, Chris Dishman isn't a huge media guy from what I can tell. They've been super quiet throughout spring, throughout the offseason, and they have a huge amount of question marks for me. I'll be honest, looking across the conference, Texas Southern has more question marks for me than any other team in the SWAC right now.
Oh yeah, and Coach Dishman, get at us, man. We're trying to get with you. We're trying to get you on the show, man. Just come holler at us for a couple minutes. But yeah, I think that it didn't help the program with the way things happened down the stretch, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You lost a lot. You lost a lot that you could have gained recruiting. And when the receiver walked out the door, that is a lot of production that's gone. Not talking about like the running back and the seniors that you lost. When that guy walks out the door, I don't know how you feel that. And I haven't seen much as to what they've brought in. I mean, I'm sure they have a roster. I'm sure they're going through spring ball. But starting as late as they did, in the circus that they ended in, I'm like you. I don't know where he started this spring with that building process. I know it was ground level, but was it ground level or did he have to fill a huge hole to get it back to ground level? And I think that's going to be the biggest question. Because the quarterback obviously has talent. Up front, they had talent. That offensive line coach was super. The play calling was super. Let's not forget that team had Southern down and basically should have walked away with that game and ended up losing it in the last 2 minutes. And we're talking about a double-digit lead. So there was talent there. But now, where's the talent and where are they mentally as a program? Because you know yourself, when you get to a certain point, everything can be great. We had a great spring. We're back, the Tigers. And then that first ball game, the first thing goes wrong. And then everybody's like, here we go again. So where are they mentally? How much did he have to fill in just to get back to ground zero? And what have they been doing? Where are they going? He got the job late. True enough, with the portal and where things going, there's players all over, no doubt about it. But can you get the players you need to come there after what just happened? Because everybody saw it.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect transition because you talk about things going wrong week one. The streak is getting kind of ridiculous against PV to start the season. Like Texas Southern needs one. And
what is it at now? Because it's worse than
8?
what the PV Grambling deal was right before Grambling broke through.
Yeah, isn't it 8? I want to say it's 8. I'm sure someone in the chat will correct me on that. I want to say it's 7 or 8, if I'm not mistaken. But it goes back too long, and I don't think they're going to get it this year. To be honest with you, I'm just going to go ahead and put my prediction out there. I think PV's got it.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I mean for PV though, this isn't a question for them. I will say something that's super intriguing for me with PV this year is how Whedon changes the offense. Obviously, Frederick heads over to Southern to be the OC. They go and get Whedon out of Campbell, who's had some explosive. Let's not forget that team in back-to-back seasons put up 40 plus points on North Carolina Central. who is a really good team, a playoff team and a Celebration Bowl championship team. They were putting up points on people, even in the CAA. Their defense was the issue last year. I'm really excited to see what Whedon does with that offense, especially with a new quarterback coming in. For me, PV, there for 2 years now, Coach, it almost I don't want to. I'm trying to word it correctly so it doesn't feel like I'm taking it away from them. 2 years now, they've had to face the conversation of, were they really the best team, or did a lot of teams just collapse around them? My biggest thing is, how do they come in with the confidence of a back to, that championship mentality where they just won the division last year? I need to see that same mentality. And I do think defense is my biggest concern for them. Defensive line, they lose Keyshawn Johnson. They lost some of the best linebackers. That front seven to me is my biggest question mark for PV. Do they have a bona fide pass rusher? And do they have some linebackers? Because they lost some ultra athletic linebackers. I want to say they had a linebacker that ran like a 4.4 at the HBCU combine this year. So I need to see what that front seven is looking like. But I will say, I think Whedon in that offense is going to be an exciting storyline going into spring for PV.
I'm with you. I think for them, the question mark, like you said, is defensively. The question mark has to be just because Coach Frederick had been there for so long, so to speak.
Yeah.
How did they pick up? What are they transitioning to? And, I think it's a good time, so to speak, because you lose a quarterback that seemed like he had been there forever. And now you bring someone in fresh with the starting of a new offense. So I think that helps them. But there again, how much did they lose and how much did they gain back as far in the playmaking room? We all know what that running back room was for them last year. We all know that the running game was an extension, was extended with the quarterback. So what is number two, the backup guy from last year? Is he going to be the guy? What are they doing? And the kids picking it up. And I hear they're buying in. I hear they've kind of already staked claim to the West again. I won't go controversial, but I mean, last year we did, we dropped that ball to them. And, at the end, you look up, we have a better record, but they get to go to the championship game because of the head-to-head. So how do they feel about it? Like you said, do they feel, does it get to a point where, okay, they backed in a couple years in a row? Do they take that next step? I'm hoping that they don't, but we'll see what happens from there after the spring.
We'll go a quick one here, because it's your team, and I know you're going to come at me with the coach speak and just be like, man, we have all the questions. We're supposed to be six in the West in the preseason, and no one needs to be looking over here on the reservation. But
I'm glad
I'll say this. Yeah, I know how it's going to be. I'll say this. My biggest question for you guys, one is offensive line, just because I feel like there's gonna be some new faces in the room, and I just want to see the guys that are coming back take that next step. And then two, Mako, this is a big year for him. This is kind of like what everyone was looking at Aaron last year for when he got back, is, can you build on a little bit of success that you had the year before, and can you turn that into even more success the next year? Mako came in with a lot of hype, Coach. I mean, you heard it from Alcorn fans. Like, it was SWAC Offensive Player of the Year expectations, and he ended up getting hurt and had to recover. It's a big year for Mako. I need to see what he looks like in this offense. New offensive coordinator, new offense, and I just need to see that offensive line take that step forward. Those are the two biggest questions for me, for you guys going into the spring.
And I'd say that's the storyline for us. Within the coach's office, he does need to be able to take that next step. We've got to see that because he is our bell cow. Everybody knows that. It's no Monterio, no Malik, no more. Hopefully Jarvion gets his name called here on the 15th, or the 16th. I guess that would be the next day. But he's got to take that next step because now he becomes that guy. Truck Griffin becomes that guy with Aaron. Truck Griffin needs Mako to become that guy for him to continue to be who he is. So yeah, I don't want to say pressure, but there's a lot of expectations for him. But to go back to what you said, those expectations for him all start with what goes on up front. Because if it doesn't get fixed or gets better up front, I don't care who we got back there, it's going to be tough. So yeah, those are the two biggest question marks for us going in to this spring. And now that we're getting to the end of this thing, you'll be here this weekend, so you'll have the opportunity to see. And hopefully we continue to make those strides and get better. We have some days have been better than the others, but I think that's to be expected when you're putting in a new system. You got a new faces in the building, the coaching staff at certain positions. So we've had more up than we've been down, so to speak, this spring. But again, it's just a spring, so we've got to see how much we retain from what we're doing now to when we get back here in June, July, and be rolling into camp, come August. So yeah, those are the same questions we have.
Two programs with new head coaches, Southern Grambling, rounding out the division. I think my question for both of these, shockingly, is the same. And it's offensive identity. And they're that question for different reasons. Now, for Grambling, I still don't understand the offensive coordinator hire personally. And then also, too, coach, something we were going to talk about, and we can kind of bring it into this topic, is teams that lost the most in the transfer portal. Right now, Grambling's lost the most players to FBS programs.
Yeah, they lost. I didn't realize that till the other day.
Their running backs, they lost some of their best offensive linemen as well. I mean, that really and truly, I'm looking at Crawley, and it's like, who's his guy? Because last year we knew who his guy was. It was Lyndon Rash. He was that guy, and he has some absolute studs to hand the ball off to. As good as Mickey Joseph has been at developing offenses over his career as an assistant and things like that, does Grambling have that right now? I don't know. And I think Crawley, you look at last year when Hull was supposedly had full control of the offense, he looked like a different quarterback than when there were some question marks going down the stretch with him. I need to see Crawley take a step forward. I just don't know if he's the guy for that system, man. When I think of a dually offense, I don't think of a quarterback that's built like Miles Crawley, as talented as he is. How did they mix and match that, and have they replaced those skill positions? That's why I question Grambling's offensive identity, is because I just don't see enough, let me say this, proven playmakers around that offense right now. Now that could change come the season if they prove themselves, but going into the season, I don't see those guys like I did last year with the Lyndon Rashes, the Chance Williams, those type of guys who have proven it. And also with their offensive line play was up and down, but they had talent. When you have a coach, this, when you have a guy that goes to Illinois on a scholarship from your school, the kid had potential and was a baller at left tackle. That's a huge loss for them. How do they replace all the talent that they lost to the portal?
Yeah, and that kid, Illinois, and then, like I said, I just found this out the other day. Those two running backs are at Group of Five programs now.
Yeah.
The receiver is at a Group of Five program now. So you lost a lot of production and a lot of leadership just on the offensive side of the ball. We're not talking about the defensive side of the ball. So
where they have arguably the best HBCU prospect going to the draft.
That you've got to replace that. It's a that program to me is a big mystery. If for nothing else, like you said, the offensive of hire, Crawley is a guy that's going to stand back there on that mound and let it go, and he can grip it and rip it. There's no question about that. But the success that's come from that offensive system has been those guys like I was just about to call his name Kincaid. Been those kind of guys, and that's not, unless Miles is holding back, that's not his game. That's not what he does. Not that he can't do it. I don't know, but that's going to be an adjustment in itself for everybody, not just the kid, but for the guy that wears the collared shirt and that's calling the offense. So I was surprised as anyone when that name was called. A lot of questions there, and how quick can they put it together? Again, that was a hire that kind of came late in the second semester as well. So how quick can they put it together? And how quick can they get those guys to buy in? A lot of people left, man. A lot of people
And,
left.
I
And
laugh when you said
and the other
the guys.
thing, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was about to say, I was just laughing when you said the guy with the collared shirt because he's gonna have the Gucci suit on. It's not gonna be a
I should have said
polo.
ascot. Whatever
Yeah,
you ascot. Yeah, that. But excuse me. The other thing that makes this interesting is that he comes from arguably your biggest rival.
yeah.
And I know, and you can say, kids don't pay attention to that. I know those kids heard everything that went on that led him to leave from your biggest rival, and now he shows up on your campus. Their kids, I mean, do we how do we set that straight?
And the D
The minute
coordinator
something
was
goes wrong, right? So the
Rollins
minute
is the D
something goes
coordinator.
wrong,
Yeah.
why we got this guy here? What is we couldn't do? So how do you keep that out of the locker room? You know what I mean? Because I know it gets heated. July is hot in Louisiana. It's hot in Mississippi. Uh, we can't move the ball. Why we brought this guy? Now you've got issues in your locker room, and that stuff, it spreads like wildfire. So I mean, that was an interesting hire all the way around. So uh, we'll see. We'll see.
And Jerome in the chat makes a good point. Tony Hull now the OC at UAPB. So a very interesting offensive hire there. I wonder if that helps their quarterback situation, which we both kind of talked about earlier, being a question mark. Quickly with Southern, offensive identity, and I see Adrian in the chat. He said, we've running the ball. Yeah, I don't know what you don't understand. We're going to run the football. And that I think they have to. Their running back room is one of the deepest in HBCU football still. They had a lot of guys come back. Rhymes comes back. Who's it? Kobe Dillon comes back, from what I was told. They got some talent in the backfield. Now, I talked about this with BJ Jones on HBCU Nightly. Coach, over the past
BJ,
probably 3-4 seasons, excluding last year. So before last year, the past 3-4 years, possibly 5, I felt like Southern was constantly in the conversation for one of the best, most talented offensive lines in the conference.
yeah.
I felt like last year was one of the worst offensive lines Southern has had in a little while. Did they reestablish that this offseason? Because I think if Southern has a good offensive line, they got the skill position talent to run the football at a high level. And they have multiple quarterbacks in that room that are good enough to make plays with their legs as well. So you get a really good balance of maybe some RPO, stuff like that, where the quarterback can go make plays with his legs. And then 2, who starts? Because everyone's just assuming it's going to be Noah who started the Bayou. But I was told that those freshmen are not making it easy. The freshmen are out there performing too, and you got 2 highly recruited kids. The kid out of Atlanta, 3-star kid, Jalen Woods, highly recruited out of Woodward Academy. And then you got the hometown kid, Zay, who was the highest rated signee in FCS football in last year's recruiting class, according to On 3, and is just a game changer with his legs and his athleticism. I think they got a very interesting quarterback decision coming up this year. And I think when you look around the room with Noah, with Zay, with Jalen Woods, Frederick's first big choice is going to be doing what Dooley failed to do, which is make the proper decision on which quarterback fit his scheme the most. And is Frederick going to be overly loyal to the guy he picks week 1 if it becomes obviously clear that that guy's not the guy? Because Coach, you saw it with Dooley 2 years ago. We knew that kid was not the guy. Adrian in the chat, who's
Excuse
my
me.
Southern guy, knew he was not the guy. Every single person that was in that stadium in Baton Rouge every single weekend knew he was not the guy. And they waited till the second half when they were down like 28-0 to make the change in the SWAC championship. Frederick has to pick the right guy because I think they have the defensive talent. I think they're going to have the running back talent. I think the wide receiver room is fairly talented. If you don't pick the right guy at quarterback, none of that matters.
And we all know what a Frederick offense is. We get that. And that, like you said, that's going to be huge because it's got to be the guy that makes it work for his offense. And that guy might not be the fan favorite. Now,
Yeah.
are we going to allow Coach Frederick to do what he needs to do? Or are we going to go with we're going to force this square into this circle hole and make it fit, which, like you said, we saw that and that does not work. So, again, just to kind of jig at the situation, we're happy that they forced that situation. So last year was different. They stay huge up front. I can't remember a time when they didn't roll out and look like a FBS team up front, dating back to Coach Odom's days. So they're known for having those guys in the trenches. And then, like you said, that tandem that they had back there, Beats and Rhymes, that is a staple of what they do. I think the biggest question is going to be when people cut that off, are they going to have a guy that can make that throw consistently? Because and I know no one in football is going to sit there and allow you to run for 400 yards a game. They're just not going to do it.
Unless you're North Dakota State and just can't stop it. And that was just, they were that good.
And that just wears you down, and you have a defense that keeps you in it. And then by the fourth quarter, the other team is just tired, that kind of thing, which goes back to, like you said, between that and what they lost defensively up front over the past 2 years, can they replace that? They've had some guys up front off the edges. They've always had a plugger in the middle, which I guess that kid comes back. When I look at the roster, he's an underclassman.
The All-American.
So what do you have that allows you to keep that keeps you in the game while that running game just continues to wear people down? Last year we were able to sprint out in such a hurry on them that we forced them out of that. And they had to try to throw the ball, which we all knew that that's not what they wanted to do. That wasn't their strong point. So what defensively is going to allow you to stay in that situation and keep people from running out on you to where you've got to pass the ball to get back in the ball game? It's going to be tough. And I think, whatever they did this spring, like you said, there's 3 guys we know that took snaps last year. The kid that finished the year at the Bayou and the kid that came in and played against us around the third into the fourth quarter. He's back as well.
Which kid was
but
that?
He wasn't a kid. He wasn't the kid that started the Bayou. He was the other kid. So I don't know if he's still there or not. But the kid that started the Bayou Classic didn't play against us. It was another kid that came in for blood toward the end of the game. So I'm assuming at that point he was in number 2. But I guess as they went through the year and the change happened, this kid emerged in that little 2-week window to where they went to the Bayou and he won the job or whatever. So can that kid hold it? And if he holds it, how long is the highest rated FBS signee going to sit and wait? How long is the kid from Atlanta going to sit and wait? And it makes it so tricky now because kids aren't waiting.
No.
So you got to handle that locker room turmoil and you've got to make the right decisions, but you got to also have the support.
And the thing that the biggest thing is, I need Southern fans from the ones I've talked to.
They don't play. They don't play.
That is a win now fan base, and I don't blame them. Listen, the program history says they win a lot, but how much patience are they going to have with this coaching staff? Like realistically,
as I get closer to the mic, how much patience did they have last year in fundraising to finish
Mm.
that out as quickly as they did. If nothing else, that was impressive. I tip my hat to that fan base. That was impressive.
Yeah, that's the thing is I know. Listen, I think Graves he deserve. I do think in some aspect he deserved that opportunity, and I'm very curious on how the fan base is going to support him. Like, is there games that they feel like they must win? Is there games that, like, if he gets off to a slow start, is there already going to be buzz? I'm very interested to see the tone
A
of the
slow
fan base
start
this
or
year.
a horrible start, because there's two differences.
Oh
Slow
yeah, no,
start.
I'm with you. I think the first key game. I don't remember their order, their schedule. I think Jackson's what, like, week.
It's close. It's
Is it
early.
is it 2 or 3, something like that? Like that game. Yeah, if it's not a win, I feel like you can't get the doors blown off of you in that game. But listen, we got all summer to talk about this. Yeah. So Adrian in the chat said, JSU, Grambling, and Alcorn are must wins every year.
Oh, that's tough.
That's a tough. Well,
Oh, that's tough.
they play what at Jackson this year. Obviously, the Grambling game's always in New Orleans, and you guys are homecoming this year for them, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Now that one, I actually might be going to Baton Rouge to that game. I'll be honest. Like, that's a game. Listen, I had so much fun in Baton Rouge the first time I went. One of the best tailgating spots, like food wise, I've been to. Like, they can cook, and I'm a big seafood fan, so I'm very biased toward them. So
2018, they had us for homecoming. It was an absolute movie. I'm
yeah, I
talking
bet.
about the the tailgate that you talk about. 2018, there should have been TV cameras out there. That's the game that game day should have been at. That type of atmosphere. It was that many people there. It was whatever smell you wanted. It was a barbecue smell. It was a seafood smell. It was a spicy seafood smell. It was fish. It was fried. It was whatever. It took us 45 minutes to get over the, the hill that
Yeah,
takes you to the stadium, the
yeah, the
bridge.
bridge.
It took us 45 minutes once we turned on that road to get over, to the point that the troopers, Baton Rouge police, literally had to come and make people move, get out of our way, so that we could get to the locker room and get to business. But yeah, homecoming, us, it's gonna be a movie.
But listen, tell coach I need to be with I need to, like, hook my car up to y'all's bus so I can get
Yeah,
into the
meet us at
stadium.
the
Because, man,
hotel.
yeah, traffic was crazy. Because when I went, I think it was y'all's game, the Alcorn Southern game, like 2 years ago, is the one I went to, and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one
yeah.
was.
That's the game you wear. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. But man, let's shift to the East, man. We spent 43 minutes talking about just the West, man. We'll double these up. Bethune and Valley, biggest
Who
question
can
marks for
win?
them.
Who can
Ooh,
win? Who can win early? Because if you win early, you're good. Bethune created a lot of hype, a lot of
yeah,
hype. Uh, if you lose early, those wheels could fall off, and you know what happens when the wheels fall off early in the season. Uh, they play each other. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. Uh, Valley, where are we at in year two of coach's tenure? Recruiting, we know what it was. Uh, how many do they bring back in July? Because I think that's been a problem, uh, retaining kids for them. So, who can win early, and who can hold it together if they lose is going to be key for both of those programs.
Bethune is so interesting to me this year because they have the ingredients to be that third topic on today's show, the rundown. They have the ingredients to be that team if it gets put together. They were what? They were close to upsetting Jackson in Jackson.
A lot of those games,
They
yeah.
they had games that they could have won last year. And if they can turn some of those close losses into wins, and I always tell people the key to predicting well in the preseason, find teams. If you want to look like a genius in the preseason, find teams that lost a lot of close games and find the teams that return a lot of talent off those teams because those are the teams that are going to turn those losses into wins the next year. That's the key. And that's Bethune-Cookman. And they landed a lot of FBS guys, like high FBS guys with some experience, 4 stars, high 3 stars. They filled it. I feel like they filled in, some of their missing pieces last year. They found those solutions in the portal. They've recruited high school pretty well. I think they're going to be good. They should have a returning quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. I think Bethune's sneaky next year, man. I just want to see what the energy around that program is like for the spring game. But I'm excited to see them in Valley. Offensive line is a huge question mark for me. I think edge rusher, because they really didn't have a guy to go get the quarterback last year, so they need someone. If you're a defense that's not elite, and I don't think Valley's defense is going to be elite, you have to have a guy that can go, you can trust on those third downs to go get the quarterback. The guy that you can just say, your job is to put whoever's in the pocket, get him to the ground at all costs. And they didn't have that guy last year. So I want to see what they look like. And yeah, Chris, I think Sprague is back. That's why I think they got that kid. And they also got the Walter Simmons kid back, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So they got some returning talent. They got some skill position guys that are coming back. That they really hit the portal hard for wide receivers and DBs, which were some needs for them. I think Bethune's going to be sneaky, but Valley.
What's their first 3 games?
Who? Valley?
Cookman.
Ooh, for Cookman. 1 second. Let me see. Because I know they released their schedule, but I don't think they had them in order yet last time I looked. I want to say Mercer. Okay, they have South Florida, Mercer at home, and then Western Michigan are their first 3 games.
Ooh.
That's if you can get to one. I'll say this: a win over Mercer would be huge for the SWAC. That's a playoff team last year. That would be the best out of conference win for the SWAC in a while.
And Ty's not there, so that's doable.
That's Ty's not there. Devron's not there. Carter Peavy's not there. Lance Wise isn't there. They lost a new head coach.
Got him in Daytona early.
Yeah, but so after those 3 games, Coach, they get Clark Atlanta, which is a win. So if you can get that Mercer game, that's 2-2. Then you get Alabama State at home, which is an interesting one. You go to A&M, to Valley. Those are 2 winnable games. I think the A&M game's very winnable, by the way. Valley's always tricky to go on the road and win at Valley. We know the conversation surrounding that. You get Jackson at home, Grambling at home, I believe. You go to Southern, you go to Texas Southern, and then obviously at the end of the year they get FAM, which
Orlando. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that.
I think that's gonna be an interesting game. I'll just say that. Also, Valley running back room looking really good. They got a lot of talent coming back in the running back room. So if Valley can figure out their O-line, I think they're going to be able to run the ball really well. They got that 3-star kid, Zamarian Kendall, coming back. He redshirted last year. I want to see what that kid looks like because I'm telling you, Coach, that kid screams freshman All-American to me if he can put it together.
That for them up front, of course. And then if Cookman gets the doors blown off of them, those first 3 games,
wrap it up.
The way they hit the transfer portal, which makes the portal very tricky, it could get really bad.
Yeah,
because they hit the portal hard.
Especially if you lose Alabama State coming out of that, because like if you go 0-3 with 3 blowouts, you beat Clark Atlanta. I don't think anyone's expecting Clark Atlanta to beat Bethune. Hopefully not. If you're sitting at 1-4 and have a blowout loss to Alabama State, oh, you're sick at that point.
It goes back to the old JUCO rule. You lose one early in the conference in the division. Now you've got to fight to hold that locker room together because now they're looking at, we don't have an opportunity. We're out of this. So those first 3 into that 4th game, very tricky for them, just because they hit the portal so hard, in my opinion.
I will say Valley, man, their AD gave them oh God, Valley will be the richest team in the SWAC after 4 weeks. But good God, man, at Tennessee State, at Lamar, at Nicholls State, and at Murray State.
Only one of those is probably a money game, though.
No, they got paid for all of them.
Oh, okay. Murray State's paying?
Yeah.
Why
I
didn't
don't
they
I
call
don't
us?
I don't think it's a lot, but I think it's
Yeah.
a small bit. But listen, I get your money, but God, that's you got Murray State's shockingly the most winnable game out of that because Nichols just
New
won the Southland
staff.
last year. Yeah, Murray's got a new staff. They're in the they're in the Valley now, so it'll be interesting to see what they look like. Yeah, new staff. Nichols just won the Southland. Lamar went from 1 wins to 6 wins last year under a new head coach, and they've returned everybody. And then you got Tennessee State, who might win the Big South OVC this year.
And you know what you're getting with that.
Yeah, and then you got the Buck Buchanan Award winning edge rusher, and then a former Valley defensive tackle All American and Jalen Bell coming back healthy, and a former All Conference linebacker from UAPB Monroe Beer coming back,
Tennessee
and
State.
Draylon Ellis, and a freshman All American running back.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
God, dog, man, that's just brutal. And then you open up your conference play with Alcorn. I
Come
mean,
see us, baby. Well, we got to go see them. But anyway, yeah.
hey, yeah, that'll be their first home game, coach, man. So
They
you'll be breaking in the stadium this year for them, man. First home game. I'm gonna
game,
get you treated
hopefully.
right. I talked to my guy coach over there. I was like, bro, we got to get. I was like, I might have to go to Valley for that game. Honestly,
Coach Anderson
uh,
better act there. He better be right.
but man, let's move up a little bit. Let's get to the rivals here. A&M, Alabama State. This is easy for me. One, A&M, can they finally put it together? This has been what, year 3 of Maynard without Akil Glass and loading up on transfers and hot seat talk. Can they finally put it together? And if not, is this is this it for Maynard? This is last year on his contract. Can he put it together? You got Lankford coming back at quarterback, coach. You got the transfer kid from UT Martin coming in, who played at Georgia State, won the MVP of the what is it, the Lending Tree Bowl or whatever it is when he was over at Georgia State. You return who's the running back? Eaglin. He's coming back. You got to develop some new wide receivers, some new O linemen, but you got some weapons coming back. Now you got to replace Zarian Hayes on the D line, but this is a win now situation for A&M, and you open with Auburn. Then you got 2D2s, and then you go to Austin P, and then you open up conference play with Jackson and FAMU.
That's tough. It could be over quick. It really could. And when I say that, as far as what the leeway is on the last year of that contract, for coach, on this show, we don't, advocate for anyone to lose their job kind of thing. But if it's an ugly start, the next man up could be taking that program over before week 5. And, at that point, now you're just hoping for the best that, we finish respectfully. But it's a tough deal, and I think it has been because they struggled to replace Glass. He was such a huge piece of that program for so long. And I don't think that the people that have come behind him, no slight to them, but those are huge shoes to fill. But not only him, but then you got to remember he had 2 kids on the outside that could go get it anywhere he put it. And then he had a home run hitter that, stood next to him in the backfield. Defensively, I don't think they've ever just been shutout city, but they had enough offensively to outscore people. And I think that's kind of where, their identity was. But when you lose those 2 receivers, one graduates, one hits the portal, Glass graduates, your running back leaves. Those are hard things to replace. And I think they replaced them on paper, so to speak. If you remember a few years ago, they were signing 5-star, 4-star, 5-star, 4-star out of the portal. And then when they got to the season, none of those kids were around.
Yeah.
And I think when you hang your hat on that, which I think they really did because they went all in. And now you've got a locker room full of kids that you weren't expecting to play, and you fall on hard times. And I just think that's kind of where they are right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gotten to the point where it's I can't. I mean, if you think back to that 2020 season, even the 2021 season where they went 7-3, despite the take away the 60-point loss to Jackson, like that was embarrassing on homecoming.
The Scooter game.
Yeah, but I mean, no one would have thought it would have just fell off a cliff like this, and it's just you see that I get it. I want to make this clear. Replacing a legendary quarterback is a hard thing to do. And not many programs have successfully done that. But now it's to the point where you got to find somebody because they haven't even had like Langford's been good and bad. Like, man, that performance against Grambling where he ran for what, like 350? Good Lord. But
helmet sticker, ESPN.
yeah,
But what after that?
Yeah, he gets benched before the Jackson game. And Quincy Casey comes in, who's now at West Georgia. So it's just, and I see in the chat, there's some people who don't think he's going to win the job. I don't know. They also got a freshman kid, coach. This kid's 6'7", playing quarterback. Like,
you can't protect him, dog.
That's insane. Coach, he's bigger than like 8 offensive linemen on their depth chart right now. As a quarterback, as a true freshman, that's insane. But Bama State, coach, we just say it on 3, 2, 1. Andrew Body,
Hype City.
That's it. I mean, and I want to say this too. I'm interested in their defense, their secondary in particular, because Mikey Victor was a big loss.
So much, man.
Coach, can you believe? I don't know where they keep finding these kids. Alabama State has more 6'3" freaking corners than any school I've ever seen. Coach, there's a senior right now. There's a senior right now on the depth chart who's 6'3". He's going to be the starting corner.
Year after year.
Where are they finding these 6'3" corners? And I heard the kid's going to be good. I've heard good things about him.
I mean, they can play year after year.
I'll say this though, with Alabama State, I think front 7 wise, they're going to be there, coach. They have an edge rusher coming back who was an all-conference guy for us. They got the linebacker from UAPB who just had 130 something tackles last year coming in to replace Bubba. They have another linebacker from Montgomery, coach, who's a stud. His name is DeMarcus Cunningham. He's going to be a breakout player, in my opinion. Very excited to see him. I think he was number 6 last year. And then for me with Body, I just want to say this. I mean, I get I understand some people are skeptical because of his record, all this stuff. Coach, I went back and watched some film of Bama State. If Andrew Body would have been on Bama State the past 2 years and just giving them 60% of what he gave Texas Southern, we're having a whole different conversation with how good that defense was, especially last year, because they were giving FAMU fits the past. Remember, they had the blocked field goal that helped them win the first year. Then last year they had the pick 6 by Major that made the score kind of look a lot different. That was a one-score. Yeah, that was a one-score game late. I'm very interested to see Andrew one fully healthy, because let's just be honest, the kid wasn't healthy week 1 last year, and you could tell in the PV game he wasn't healthy. He's had a year to recover now. He's 100%. This is the best quarterback that this system has had in a while. They go get an OC coach who took Winston-Salem from averaging 14 points per game or something like that into the mid-20s in 1 year. The guy can coach offensive football, and I talked to some A&T guys. They think he's legit. You pair Body up with a new OC, you give him a defense. The one thing, and I've talked to the Bodies about this, wide receivers is my biggest question mark for Alabama State next year. Because, coach, I don't think we can speak on this enough. I still don't think people really understand how good Keyshawn Johnson really was.
Oh, he was a dude.
There's a reason he's at Western Kentucky right now that consistently puts receivers in the NFL. And I'm telling you this, if he goes and does what he needs to do, coach, I don't know about you, it would not surprise me to see Keyshawn Johnson as a day 2, potential day 3 draft selection next year.
Easily. And you know how I feel about that kid. That kid was outstanding.
Yes.
And that was a huge loss for them. The fresh start for Body, I think, is something that was needed, no doubt.
Yes.
Shout out to his people, his mom, all them, really great to us, show-wise, things like that. The only question mark I have, just because you hear the rumblings and things like that, are Are they going to allow him to be him? Or are they going to allow, hey man, just keep it in the middle of the road. Our defense got it. Just hand it off. The worst thing that could happen is if we punt it, meaning not letting him be who he is. And I'm okay with that. But, for their success, it'll be interesting to see what they do with him and who they put, like you said, on the outside, the pieces around him. So, that to me would be the biggest question for them. What are they going to allow him to do offensively? It looks good in the spring. We threw it 100 times in the spring game. But game one, when it gets tight, hey, man, hand that ball off. Or let Andrew do his thing. So this is going to be an interesting deal, I think, all the way through. And I think that first conference game, we'll see. We'll see where they are.
I'll say this, and I don't have any inside information, so this is just me speculating. Looking at E-Rob's moves this offseason, going to get a multi-time all-conference linebacker, going in the transfer portal and trying to load up on some weapons, going to get Andrew. I think that was him saying, I'm looking at FAM, new coaching staff. Willie's gone. They're going to have to replace a quarterback. I'm looking at
Time is
Jackson.
now.
I'm looking at Jackson. We just
The
beat them
time is
last year
now.
in Jackson and homecoming. We're not worried about A&M because we beat them the past 2 years and Maynard's on the hot seat. We're not worried about Bethune or Valley. I think E-Rob's looking, coach, and you can debate it. Listen, I understand Jackson and FAMU fans won't agree with his thinking. I'm just talking about this is what I think E-Rob's feeling. This is his year. He's looking at the SWAC. He's looking at the SWAC West. If they aren't in the SWAC championship, this year's a failure.
Yeah, the time is now.
It's the same thing we talked about with Willie last year. If Willie wouldn't have won the SWAC last year, we talked about it. It was a failure. You had to win the SWAC. And I think E-Rob's kind of in that same position this year. You get Jackson at home. You get FAM at home. It's the year. It's the year.
Set. The table is set.
So I'm interested to see it, man. I think the top three of the West is going to be so interesting to me with FAM, with State, and with Jackson, East. And potentially or East. Yeah, East. My bad. Coach, our last two teams, Jackson and FAM. Let's start with Jackson.
Question mark City.
With Jackson, it's this. There's two things. One, Jacoby and Morgan's development. What does that look like? Now, I know there's talk of a quarterback battle. I heard that they got some talent. Listen, they brought in a 3-star kid out of Louisville, Ethan Terrell. They got the kid that was banged up last year. I forgot where has he come? I think it was UL Monroe or something. I don't remember exactly where he's from, but I still think Jacoby is the guy for that team. For me with Jackson, it's his development, and then two, the outside linebacker spot it was bad last year. I'm just going to be honest with everybody. Like, they did not have an edge rusher that they thought they did. They have to find somebody to go get after the quarterback. That was like their signature the previous 2 years when Niles Gaddy went for like 4 sacks against Tennessee State. And then you had James Houston finish top 5 in the FCS for the Buck Buchanan when he put up like almost 20 sacks that year.
Crazy numbers.
They had to they really and truly have to find somebody to rush the passer because they got some guys on the interior coming back that are going to be good. But are they going to have anyone to get after the quarterback? That's my biggest question mark. They got a lot of guys returning in the secondary, but I do think Jacoby and Morgan's the guy, but he still has to prove a lot to me. I saw some building blocks for him, coach, but in the Alcorn game, him getting hurt really took a lot of momentum from his development, I feel like. And you saw the difference. As soon as they had to go back to Jason, that offense was atrocious. Really, really and truly. I mean, it just wasn't good. Jason was not the quarterback for that system. They went and got a whole lot of new coaches. I think Ramirez is a good hire, the offensive line coach.
Yes.
And
yes.
I'll say this. I cannot believe I'm saying this after the past 3 years. Jackson going into the year, coach. Now, unit-wise, it's hard to project because we know offensive line success is a unit thing. On paper, position by position, there's a strong argument Jackson has the best offensive line in HBCU football coming back this year. With some of the young guys they got coming back, listen, Quay Davis was a
Yeah,
mauler
man.
last year. The kid was
Left
a
tackle.
freshman All-American for a
Yeah,
reason. They they they
yeah.
br- they got some of their guys back from the portal. I think the offensive line is going to be really good, and that's something that Jackson cannot say for the past few. I mean, those offensive lines in those Celebration Bowl teams were atrocious at times. Their offensive line's there. Irv Mulligan comes back. I want to see what he looks like fully healthy. It's hard coming back off of injury. But for me, Jacobian's development coach, edge rusher, two biggest question marks for me for Jackson.
Uh, I'd go with the QB position as well. System, because it's a new system.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Is it a system that they're going to try to fit around him, or are they going to try to fit him in a system? Because you know, and I know, if they go old Houston Cougar offense, that ain't it. What they tried to do last year with Brown, that wasn't it, which brought him to the table. So now with the new guy, what are you bringing? Are you willing to fit it to him, or how is that going to work?
Yep.
You lost a lot of pieces in the portal. You lost a very explosive receiver in
I
the
think he came
portal,
back.
but I think he left again.
He left again? Jesus
That's word
Christ.
on the street.
I can't keep up
Word
with
on the
these kids,
street. I
man.
don't know. I could be wrong. Word on the street.
Oh, we got to fix this transfer portal rules. Jesus
I think
Christ.
he dipped again. Uh, Defensively, like you said, new coordinator, new position coaches there. Uh, what is Coach Quinn going to do defensively? Are they keeping the same scheme? Is he putting something else different in? And I think the other question mark, which I hope they don't fix, was the corner. Uh, the cornerback position. I think
They
they were a
had
little stronger at the safety, but by the time they got
yeah.
to us, the
Who
the
who
the
was
back end.
who's the one kid that there was one guy Wiggins was good. Number 5 at the corner spot was good, but I do feel like they needed to upgrade at corner number 2. I thought
Yeah,
5
opposite
came
of
along
him.
really nice. Yeah.
Opposite of him. And I know they had a lot of injuries uh, throughout, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But even with that, there's got to be a plug and play. And if it's not a plug and play, you've got to figure it out. The guys with the college shirts got to figure it out to make it fit for what you do have. If you're a man team and someone goes down and you can't play man anymore, what are you going to do? And I think the system and what they do at the quarterback position is going to be very big, like you said, because they have a lot of new faces. I hope they don't figure it out, but if they figure it out, I hope they don't figure it out again once we get to that game in November. But a lot of question marks, and we'll know about them early.
Yeah.
We'll know about them early. And
I,
like we said earlier in the show, if you fall 2 games down in the East, are you
yeah.
going to be able to hold it together in the middle of the road?
I'm very now. I know that I think their ULM game got moved to Thursday. Now, which I don't like. I'll say this: I don't think ULM controlled that. That conference has like Wednesday and Thursday night games all the time. I think they kind of were forced to do that. Now I do say now that's a good point. Robert McDaniel's coming in. Has some good experience playing in the back end. I know that's your guy, but he's a baller. I'll give him that. The kid was balling for Alcorn, and I do think too. I like, and I know you probably feel the same way because you have a relationship with him. I did like Quinn being promoted to DC. I thought
I
that
think
was
he
the
had to
move.
do that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think they had to
that
do
was the
that.
move. That there was no reason to get anyone else. Like Quinn, I think has been groomed to be the next guy there. If you were going to make a move, you had to upgrade him. I really think that's a good move for them. I'm very excited to see what his defense looks like now. For
Quinn, come on the
FAM,
show, man. Talk to us.
yeah, we're going to have to get Quinn back on the show for sure. I will say FAMU though, coach. This
Question mark
is
city.
it was going to be easy to preview them. Like right after the season, man, it would have been so easy to just preview everything they had coming back. Burks in the portal, the former 5-star from LSU in the portal, Gentle Hunt in the portal. they've lost some players now, and am I I'm trying to think how to phrase this.
and
Am I hitting
coaches.
am I hitting the panic button? No. But am I raising an eyebrow in that first bead of sweats forming up here? Yes. Because the whole argument for hiring Colsey and promoting people is
Was to keep it in the middle of the
to
road.
to keep the team together.
Yep.
Everyone's saying if we make this hire, no one's transferring. But if we hire outside, X,
Everybody's
Y, and
transferring.
Z are all hitting the portal. They hire him, they bring him in, and you lose arguably three of your best players. And I think Gentle Hunt was their best player.
Oh, by far.
No, okay, second best. They still have their best player. I forgot about Anthony Dunn. Anthony Dunn, that dude's so legit, edge rusher. I mean, what he did to Donkwell in the Celebration Bowl was a problem. Gentle Hunt's done it for longer, but I really, really do like Anthony Dunn's potential. I'm concerned about this, coach. Looking at the film of the guy that they think's winning the QB competition, I don't see it. I just don't see it. I'll say this. I don't think the starting quarterback for FAMU this year is on the roster right now.
It's tough.
They're going to have to go get someone from the portal, if I had to guess.
And that's tough because you're in spring ball now. You're talking about bringing someone into the summer. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Uh, Coach Cozy, come holler at us, man. You said you were coming. We're waiting on you. But I think that when you lose a leader like Gentle, because he was a leader, because he was older, like you said, the Dunn kid, you like again, his play speaks for itself. You lose Coach Simmons, you lose arguably the second best recruiter in FCS football behind me. Uh, that's a lot to replace. You know what I
And the D
mean?
coordinator. So they went to Murray State.
That's a lot to replace in a short span of time. And we all know how that situation played out. So take the on the field stuff out of it. If this thing starts bad, man, I mean, where do we like as you just said, do we push it or do we, give it time? Because this and I only say that because of the way it all went down. That stuff, and people may not want to believe it, that stuff bleeds over, man. And the first sign of trouble, all that's going to come back, man.
Yeah.
All that's going to come back. And that's going to be one of those situations where Coach Cozy's first job is going to be to hold it together, and he's going to be tested. Um,
Yeah.
the spring game doesn't look good. There's going to be chatter. You know what I mean? Uh, if it looks good, the expectations go through the roof.
Yeah.
Uh, you
Well, I mean,
know,
this was the same conversation we had with TC last year. I mean, like
but
there was
well, yeah, because he was coming
yeah,
in off of the
yeah, he was coming in off the back-to-back SWAC
and
championships. He
his
was
his thing was probably worse than what Cozy is right now, actually. Now that you said that, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, but TC had a way more challenging rebuild than what Colsey has. Like let's I want to make that obviously clear. I want making a apples to apples comparison, but I'm saying he came in with expectations through the roof. The one thing he does have to live up to is they won the Celebration Bowl. And so that's the comparison. And also too, TC had like a skeleton roster when he at one
Oh
point when he had to
yeah,
come like he had to replace so many guys.
everybody
Um
jumped.
I see some people getting mad. I get it. And saying that we do this every year with FAMU. I think we both picked FAMU to win the East last year, so I don't know where that's coming from, but I just it's
I
got to
did. I
be
like Coach
concerning.
Cozy.
Yeah, it's got to be concerning to a point though, because you have to be concerned losing some of those players. Now, I will be interested to see what their spring game looks like. The biggest question mark for me is QB play. if there's a quarterback that I think could start on the roster, I think Junior is the guy. The guy who he was, I think he was a freshman when he came in. That Prom's first year, the guy that played in the second half. I think he's probably the most talented quarterback in that room right now. I just don't think Richardson's that guy. I really don't. Maybe I'm missing something in his film, and I could be completely wrong. And I'll admit that I'm wrong during the season if that comes to fruition. But I just don't think he's an elite quarterback. I think if he starts, I think it's just another middle of the road SWAC quarterback. And the bar is in hell right now for quarterback play in the conference.
I mean, that's not even debatable. I mean,
I will say their one bright spot is secondary. They're loaded in the secondary with Kendall Bowler and those guys. Their secondary is going to be fine. I'm not worried about FAMU's secondary at all, but I do worry about the quarterback play. I still think their tight end room solid. They got the running back room. They bring back both running backs, Dean and who's the other transfer? The big Yant is coming back as well. So they'll have talent in the backfield. It's replacing some of the pieces they lost on the offensive line and getting a quarterback.
That was huge.
They do have, listen, let me say this. The edge, and this could be, we could shift to this a little bit too, because I talked about this on HBCU Nightly. I really don't think people give credit to how good the edge rusher class is in HBCU football this year. Coach, there are, let me just list the names who are probably going to be preseason All-Americans. FCS All-Americans.
I'm tough. I'm just telling you right now, that SWAC Media Day preseason,
oh yeah,
there's going to be a lot of people mad. I'm just telling you, because there's so many names to choose from, man.
Well, even go. Let's include all HBCUs together for this. Terrell Allen, Buck Buchanan Award winner, just
monster,
killed it. Malachi Bailey, Alcorn State. Elijah Williams, Morgan State.
Monster.
Anthony Dunn Jr., FAMU.
Monster.
I mean, you got the Shelby Givens at Southern. Monster too, All-American last year.
Who can do it from standing up, hand on the ground.
He can, I mean, just the amount of edge rushers that are going to be
in the people at different positions, man.
I mean, dude, that's there's a chance. I mean, that
somebody really good is going to get left off of a list.
Yeah, I think so. I really do think so. I mean, I'm trying to pull it up here because I've already kind of started looking at All-American lists, kind of getting ours together. I mean, there's a legit chance that HBCUs have like 5 or 6 edge rushers as All-Americans.
That's saying something. That's big.
Yeah, and Gentle Hunt would have probably been in the hunt for D tackle if he wouldn't have left.
I agree. Yeah.
So it's just God, and I mean also too. Jackson has 2 really good interior guys coming back as well. So I mean, there's so much talent across the defensive line, man, and then also too, I think running back this year, Coach, is going to be just insane this year in terms of overall talent. You got Eaglin coming back. Eden James coming back, Irv Mulligan coming back. You got the other kid for Howard too. The one that started number 2's coming back. So you got 2 of their top running backs coming back as well. You got Kinsey Christian from North Carolina A&T coming back. I mean,
from Morgan's coming back.
Yeah, JJ's coming back as well. I'm just trying to think. You got the 2 kids from Southern coming back.
Beats and rhymes.
As well. So and you got both kids from FAMU coming back. It's like, good Lord, man. There's just so much talent at the running back position that is crazy. So I'm really excited. Real quick, Coach, is there any storylines, questions, positional battles that the MEAC, you're looking at it across the MEAC?
I think it's got to be the situation up there with NCCU. Because you're replacing that, and I know what they say the expectations for the new kid is, but until he actually does it in between the lines when the bands are playing and popcorn's being sold, That's going to be that. Those are going to be huge shoes to fill, and we all know how that second guy coming in behind that kind of player goes. So, and he's a young kid. So, how does that go? I think that is huge for them,
Mm.
and I think Howard uh, coming back off of that run and losing, the pieces that they lost on defense. I think that's going to be a major deal for those two teams. I think because they are the front runners, and then as everyone's saying, it's about time for Norfolk State to either step up or hush it up. So uh, I think there's going to be three storylines from that conference that are going to be must sees.
I think obviously the Walker conversation at Central is going to be crazy. We talked earlier about A&M still struggling to find a way to replace Akil Glass. You
Mhm.
got the bet like maybe a Central alum will have a problem with it. I think that Davius Richard went down in history as the best player to ever play at North Carolina Central. I mean, he set almost every record he could to a point, especially rushing record from a quarterback spot's crazy. But I, Coach, me and you have talked about it, and we've had Coach Leone on here. The word on the street is if you built a quarterback for Leone's system, it's Walker Harris. And if that's the case, and they could be scary because they got some receiving talent on that team coming back. Now they'll have to replace was it, I think Collier, right? At running back. So, but I think they're going to be that whole development with Walker is going to be huge. I will say this: we didn't mention this. South Carolina State with Chinnis Berry. There's not anything in particular I'm looking for there. Just and this kind of we're going to hit our last topic here soon with dark horse teams. Chinnis Berry being an unknown going into this year at South Carolina State is terrifying for anybody who sees them on that schedule. Because I'm telling you, Coach, I have a feeling he's going to knock somebody off that no one is expecting. And
Coach Barry, come holler at us.
where they open up week 1, Coach.
Where at?
Tallahassee, Florida, in Bragg Memorial Stadium against FAMU.
A lot of questions will be answered for both sides.
Yeah. The longest home winning streak in the country will be on the line that game as well after Montana State lost to North Dakota State last year in the playoffs. I will say, too, Coach, again, we had this conversation last year. Can Morgan find a damn quarterback?
It's 10 points a game.
That's it. I mean,
Just 10 points a game.
Jesus, man. They have to find somebody because, Coach, they return Elijah Williams. They return Eric Hunter, who was up for the MEAC Defensive Player of the Year, was an FCS All-American. They return a freshman All-American corner, Coach, as a freshman, 6'3", and was like this, I think, top 10 highest graded corner in the country and only allowed like 16 catches.
6'3".
The kid's a freak. And then also with Howard, you still got Kenny Gallup returning. You still got Casey Hawthorne. You got that running back room. It's going to kind of come down to offensive line development. I think Howard's going to be very good on the interior of the offensive line. Their offensive tackle is my question mark for them. Who are they going to get to replace Donkwa and some of those guys? And then also too, we've talked about it earlier with Jackson. When you talk about the best offensive lines in HBCU football, if it doesn't start with South Carolina State, Coach, those kids that that got their feet wet in the Celebration Bowl against Jackson, they all came back again.
Yeah.
And they paved the way for a freshman All-American running back last year.
They're seasoned.
Oh, man, they're going to be it's going to be so interesting. And then Tennessee State, just to kind of throw the independents some love. Tennessee State says, man, if it's kind of the whole conversation, Coach, with Alabama State. If not now, then when? When, like, and Coach, you heard me.
Because you were
I
there
talked to
last
Coach
year.
Fisher at the National. Yep. Oh, I was there. I've been there for 2 years. Like, I just Coach, on and obviously games aren't won on paper. On paper, they're there in terms of competing at the conference level. It's just when they'll have just some inexplicable losses. They lose to Charleston Southern to give up 35 points after only allowing like 120 total yards. How that works makes zero sense to me in terms of football IQ. And then Draylen's banged up, and then they this year they make an offensive coordinator change. Your defense is there. If Draylen Ellis can just channel like 80% of what he was at Austin P, you're winning the conference and you're in the playoffs. And then we could talk about matchups and things like that. I think Tennessee State would find a way to try to host a game. And especially with the potential, the NCAA is voting on seeding. If you can get a top seed, you can host. And the bidding process is supposedly going away in the playoff, which I think is a good thing. Um, I just, it's time for Tennessee State, man. You got Draylen, you got a freshman All-American running back, you have talented wide receiver, offensive lines experience, Terrell Allen, Jalen Bell, Monroe Beard. It's there. It's time to win now. And I just, if they don't do it this year, coach, I don't know what's going on because UT Martin loses their whole team to the portal. All-American tight end goes to A&M. Quarterback's gone. All-American running back to Oklahoma. All-American defensive end to UCF. They losing talent left and right. So UT Martin's going to have a rebuild. SEMO lost their whole team to graduation. Are you, if you can't beat Eastern Illinois, we're going to have some sort of conversation about what the potential is moving forward in the first place. Because that's probably your biggest competition is Eastern Illinois, who was 8-3, one of the first five out. So it's do or die for Tennessee State this year, coach. And if they don't get it done this year, man, I don't know what else Eddie's got to do to build that team into a contender in that conference.
They've got to find a way to finish because they have the hot starts. They get to the middle of it, they're right there in the hunt. And then, like you said, coming down the stretch, those last 3-2, ball games, you go out and you lay an egg versus an Elon or somebody. They've got to find a way to finish, and he's got to be able to. He should be answering those questions in the spring right now. What have we got to do to finish to ensure that we make that run into the playoffs? Because week 7, it's looking like they can't be denied. And then week 8, like you said, they go out and they have a horrible loss. One that no one sees coming. And then that loss turns into 2. So coach has got to be right now figuring out a way to finish the season. And they've got to figure out a way, like you said, to get over the hump and not let one loss turn into 2. And good teams don't have bad losses.
I'm trying to pull up here. Okay, so coach, you texted me 2 questions, and then we'll end the show with the dark horses. You said with the between the schools with the late hires. So I'm assuming you mean Texas Southern, Grambling, and FAM would be the ones you considering. Which school has the best chance to be over 500? I'll be honest. I think the only okay, I'm not gonna say the only. If I had to put money on it, I think Southern and FAM are my 2 picks for the teams that are going to be over 500. I can see Grambling sitting at like 5-6, or I guess everyone plays 12 games this year, so I guess I can see them being like 6-6, 5-7, something like that. I think FAM and Southern are both going to finish over 500. Now, do they win the division? I'm not going to go that far yet. I'm not even making my picks for the division yet, but I think FAM and Southern are going to finish over 500. Texas Southern is going to be fighting not to finish last in the division, in my opinion. And I think Grambling is going to be like 1 or 2 games under 500.
I'm with you. I think FAM has the best chance just because of, who they are, barring that they don't lose anybody else, big name, so to speak. I think the team that's really that's going to flirt with that, just like you said, is Grambling, just because of the system and what they lost, trying to replace all of that. and win ball games. The West is going to be tough this year. So my top would be FAM to do it, Grambling to be a little shaky.
Yeah. I'm with you on the Grambling being shaky. Just I don't trust the coordinator hires. That's just me. But and then you also messaged me, and I know me and you have talked about this in the past. You said the SWAC MEAC Challenge week 1 is kind of a staple, or or week 0 is one of the only week 0 games. You wanted to kind of talk about how beneficial it would be to have a SWAC versus like another FCS conference challenge or matchup or something like that. I Here's what I'm going to tell you, because I've talked about this in the past, and I can I'm the chat's loading, and I know it's going to come soon. They're going to say financially it does not make any sense. Is going to be the argument here, is that it makes no sense. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the last time that now it wasn't a SWAC team, coach. It was North Carolina A&T, and I want to say they played Jacksonville State in the FCS kickoff game. Like, I think it was like 2017, 18. If someone in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong on the year, but A&T played in the kickoff game against Jacksonville State, and that was kind of the last time that there was a game like that. But I'm just going to tell you, like, I think the average SWAC or MEAC fan is not interested in a game like that unless it's a money game. And you've played in it. I don't know how much the SWAC and MEAC make from the SWAC MEAC challenge. Maybe you have a little bit more understanding of like the behind the scenes with that.
That's above my pay grade.
But I can't imagine. I don't think the winner gets a payout for that game. I
No,
think
I think everything is
travel's paid
I
for and
think
stuff like
expenses are taken care of. When I was doing that, it was
which.
the hotel, uh, your meals while you're there. Of course, your post game meal, things like that. But as far as receiving a check, I don't think we received one. I could be wrong, but I don't think we received one. But we didn't receive a bill either.
Yeah, so I think that would be the key, is you would have to do it somewhat like, because I think the FCS kickoff game is like that too, where they pay for everything, but I don't know if there's a payout to the winner. There might be a small one. And so someone in the chat said there is a guarantee for the SWAC MEAC challenge. Probably a ticket split or something like that. You could do that for the FCS kickoff as well. The only thing is, I think now here's the question for you. Is there a certain conference that you would have in mind to do it with?
I mean, I think it's got
Or
to be
would
one
you
of those
just
deals. Go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say, or do you want it to like rotate, like just like, so the question is, do you want it to be like a single game like the SWAC MEAC challenge? Or are you thinking more of a basketball type model, like when you have the is it the SEC and the Big 12
No, Big Ten, ACC
or
Big
Big
Ten
10, like,
Challenge.
yeah, or like in the middle of the season, everyone will play, and then every few years, I think, because the SEC had more teams, like 2 or 3 teams would sit out every year, and they would rotate through it.
Yeah,
Are you thinking about that? Or are you thinking about just a single game in like week 0, kind of like the SWAC MEAC challenge?
I'm thinking like you know, more the basketball model so that everybody has the opportunity. Uh, I think that it bridges the FCS gap. I think it would bridge the uh, playoff talk, although nobody wants to talk about it. But I think it would help. It would benefit the kids more so than anything, just because now we see where we are as an FCS level. Uh, Everybody's across the board. We are here. This is what we're doing. I think that it would be beneficial for just the landscape of college football at our level, just to kind of see. We sit there and we watch them. They watch us on television. Um, I just think to put that in person, I think that would be a good deal. I could be wrong. Now, there's certain things, conferences, of course, you wouldn't want to do that because of the travel, things like that. But I think you could put it together where it would be centrally located kind of deal, um, and everybody be good with it. But I don't know how you get that to the table. But I think it would be beneficial. I really do. I think it would be a good deal.
Now, I don't. Okay, so let me say this. I don't think it's as far fetched as you think. Because thinking about it now, if someone could correct me in the chat, doesn't the SWAC have this for basketball with the Pac-12? Like, didn't
Yeah.
USC come play at Alabama State this year?
Hmm. Yeah.
So you could set it up like that, where you could find, because here's the decisions that would have to be made. If you keep the SWAC MEAC challenge, you have to find so you would have to find a conference that had less than 12 teams for one, most likely, because you would have one conference member obviously playing in the SWAC MEAC challenge week 0. So that would take a team away. So you would, I'm gonna say, because I was thinking 12 teams. Big Sky's 12 teams. I think Missouri Valley's 11 or 12, depending on. I think Western Illinois um, left the conference. You have the Southland doesn't have enough, obviously.
I have this
So I
thought
mean,
out. I mean, what you do, uh, going back to my notes, I have this thought out. So if Commissioner Quella wants to holler at me, I got it. But what you do, even if it was a full MEAC SWAC deal, which I think would really be beneficial if you made it a full MEAC. It's not just one game. You made it a full deal, especially with them adding the game now. So, okay, we know the MEAC only has X amount of teams. So you
yeah,
take and you match it up with Howard was the number one team out of there. Now they play us. We were the sixth team or whatever. And you run it that way, and then that way it continues to balance out. So if it's us in the Big Sky, or us in, say, a conference that only has 10, then you take your top 10 teams, and then that's how you go. You're good on good. You're throwing your best out there. We're throwing our best out there. To me, it's a simple deal. Uh, the MEAC SWAC Challenge is great. Had the opportunity of playing in that. But I think if you make that a deal, like we did in junior college, there was a bowl game that hosted 4 teams. Uh, One team, well, 2 teams played at this time, and they were in a dome, Iowa Graphics Bowl, I think is what it was. And then the afternoon set was the other 2 teams. I think you find those venues like the Georgia States where you play, and you make it a big deal. And I think it's going to generate revenue. It's going to generate funds. Who's not going to come see Howard, who just won it, play at Alcorn? And I'm just using that. Who's not going to come see NCCU play at Jackson? Who's not going to come see that? Week 0. And then cross town, we got Norfolk State playing Southern. Who's not going to come see that? I think it's a doable deal, and especially now more so than ever, adding that game. Because why would you want to play? What's the team from California? Why would you want to play them when you could add something at the front of your deal and get a real true measuring stick for your team instead of playing a team from California or uh, Lynchburg, and run the risk of those games of where you don't get to count the stats, the kids don't get the stat, that kind of thing. Why not do that?
yeah,
Again, that's just
yeah.
me.
I think it's definitely doable. I think the only thing I would say is, like you said, not playing the VULs, not playing the Lincolns, the unnecessary extra D2 game that everyone seems to have. You could add the MEAC SWAC challenge and actually have like a real challenge. Because
A true
the one
challenge.
thing I would say is, I think you would. It actually might even make for better games if you matched it up directly. So Howard and FAMU would rematch in the SWAC MEAC challenge in Atlanta. Always
Let's do it.
be like the top 2
The
teams
two that
be
left.
in the
Yeah,
MEAC SWAC challenge and be a rematch game
kick
to
it off.
open the season week 0. I think that would be amazing on, on ABC again. And then like next, I guess it would be this next year, it'd be Howard versus FAMU, Central versus PV, since PV was the winner of
Yeah,
the division last year.
they were in the
And
championship
then
game.
you would
Yeah,
have what, Morgan versus Alabama State, which would be a great game, by the way. South Carolina State versus Jackson. would be the game that would probably go next. Then you would have Norfolk versus I think you guys were second in the division, so it would be Norfolk
Mhm.
versus you guys, and then Delaware State would play. I'm assuming Southern would be the next team. So it'd be Delaware State versus
Yeah,
Southern.
because they beat Grambling, so yeah, they finished ahead of them.
They
Yep.
yeah they beat Grambling, and they also beat Alabama A&M, which would be the next team in the East. So that those would be the matchups, and then you could do it like they do in basketball, where Howard and FAMU would be a neutral site, but then the team with the best record
Host it
host
up.
the game the first, or just rotate it where Central would host the game, the SWAC team would host the next game, vice versa. Then the next year, if you were in it, if you didn't host a game the previous year, you just host it next year. So I think that would be fun. And another one. So this probably isn't the average SWAC fan asking for this idea, but I have seen it commented a few times on my show and some other shows. There were a lot of people saying that for it now you would have to get a conference that doesn't want to play in postseason to play in postseason, but they were talking about like a SWAC versus Ivy League challenge,
Mm,
whether that's postseason play with bowl games or even like a week 0, week 1 type thing, which would be, and you could structure it kind of the same way in that point where like it would be Yale versus FAMU, and then you would have Harvard versus PV, and it would just rotate who hosted at their stadium and stuff like that. I mean, I like the idea. I don't know how the fans would feel about it, especially with certain matchups. Like, you know, I now there's some Southern fans in the chat. How excited are they for a Delaware State matchup? I don't know. Um, how excited they would be for that, but there are some matchups like FAMU Howard rematch, a Jackson Central or a Jackson South Carolina State rematch. I think would generate some interest. Um, so Okay, so apparently, let's see. B Rob said the conference gets $1 million for the SWAC MEAC challenge, and I think the school that plays gets 500K with expenses paid.
okay. I knew we didn't get a check, a bill. I knew we didn't get a bill. I knew that much. I just didn't know about
Yeah,
the split or whatever that kind of deal. I just knew we didn't get a bill. But I
yeah,
also have the idea uh, of now we make that thing a 14 playoff with the winner, FAM, won the conference championship. They host the number 2 team from the MEAC. PV hits the road, goes to play Howard. Winner of those 2 games, that's who goes to the Celebration Bowl. I mean, if we're talking about generating revenue, I think those are ideas and things that you bring to the table. And I think at the end of the day, it makes sense. You're going to be able to sell TV ads. You're going to be able to sell those. You're going to be able to sell tickets. Who wouldn't want to be a part of the HBCU playoff? I mean, let's think about it.
yeah. I'm trying to figure out the payment thing because people are saying that's not the case. I'm trying to see if there's any numbers publicly about it. But I do know that at least the schools get their travel covered. Um,
Yeah. So
yeah,
we got 2 nights paid for with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and post game meal. We had 3 buses paid for, which we had for those 3 days, so to speak. And I'm trying to think, was there anything else that we actually got there for that kickoff challenge? I think that was pretty much
yeah.
it. But like I said, I didn't know about a check coming back or anything like that. I just know we didn't receive a
It
bill.
Yeah, I think it's the same with the FCS kickoff game. Who I think it's this year is like North Alabama and SEMO. I want to say it's the FCS kickoff game this year. Now, there's been a huge argument over the FCS kickoff game because it used to be like on home campuses, and it used to be like major programs like Montana versus North Dakota State, home and home. And now it's kind of shifted into like last year it was Mercer, North Alabama. This year it's North Alabama SEMO, and everyone's kind of like, why do we care about a game like that when we were having You would have North Carolina A&T, Jacksonville State, who were both top 15 teams at the time. It would always be like top teams in the country, and now they've moved it to Montgomery rather than home and homes, and they're always including an Alabama team in it. Whether I think Sanford played in it, I think Jacksonville State played in it when
Yeah,
they
I
were at
think their last
FCS.
year. Yeah, their last
Yeah,
year. Yep.
so now North Alabama's playing it. I'll be interested to see if Bama State or A&M's interested in playing in it one year. Not sure if it's even on the table or been offered or anything like that, or if they would even want to do that, right, and then lose a home game potentially and have to play in week 0. Um, okay, so someone in the chat put the payout was 175 per team plus hotel, travel, and a meal stipend. So that's
Okay.
not, I mean, that's not a killer amount of money, and I'm pretty sure that would be easy to fundraise in terms of the idea you're talking about. I think it'd be good. And I've called for it. I think more conferences need challenges to encourage out of conference scheduling. So, Coach, I don't know, the Valley and Big Sky already do this. So between like week 1 to week 3 or 4, the Missouri Valley and Big Sky will have a bunch of out of conference games together, where they'll play teams from the other conference, and it won't be as like we're going to keep the record and who won the challenge this year, stuff like that. But it promotes out of conference scheduling between the conferences, being the two premier conferences in FCS. I think if you're the SWAC and even the MEAC, I mean, there's enough conferences in your geographical footprint where you could get a home and home going with limiting the travel. Like obviously doing a home and home challenge with the Big Sky would be difficult because someone eventually is going to have to go to Eastern Washington. Someone's eventually going to have to go to Sacramento State or Montana State. Um, I think it would be more realistic to have one with the Southland, the SoCon, the MEAC, the Big South OVC, even the CAA to a point. Because, like, yeah, someone's going to have to go up to maybe Delaware or something like that. But a good majority of those teams now are in the Carolinas and stuff like that. So, but I think the SoCon would be a fun one. And I think it's a conference that maybe solely HBCU football fans don't 100% watch or understand, but it's been one of the most competitive FCS conferences over the past, however many years. And you would get some really interesting matchups. Like, I'm trying to pull up the standings from the SoCon last year. So, I mean, you would get some decent matchups where the travel wouldn't be, anything that couldn't be handled. And they have, I think, 9 teams in that conference,
Mm,
which means you would get so next year you would have Furman versus FAMU, Chattanooga PV, Mercer versus Bama State, which no, okay, they're playing Sanford, but Mercer versus Bama State, Western Carolina versus Jackson, or you guys, Sanford versus Jackson, or you guys, however you want to work out the standings, ETSU, Wofford, VMI, the Citadel, like all of those schools are in the South. But the top of the matchups, like, man, sign me up for Furman FAMU all the time.
oh yeah, no doubt.
And then the
No
Southland
doubt.
would be, yeah, I see people putting Southland. The only thing Southland makes sense regionally. The depth of the Southland is not there. If you're not playing Southeastern Louisiana or Incarnate Word, I don't see the intrigue of those matchups because I feel like Southern, Alcorn, PV, like sometimes Grambling, they schedule those Southland teams pretty well. If I had to say, like Grambling's playing Texas A&M Commerce this year, I think Southern's playing Nichols right this year, or McNeese, one of the two.
We have McNeese.
Okay, you have McNeese, and I think
Yep.
Southern's playing Nichols, if I'm not mistaken, in the middle of their season. So I think the Southland's scheduled pretty well. I think doing it with a Big South OVC or a SoCon would make more sense due to the lack of out of conference scheduling that the SWAC gets with them. But I like your idea. I think the SWAC MEAC one, a lot of people would jump on the bandwagon for that, honestly, because you would get so many interesting matchups. Like Norfolk Southern with the whole Dawson Odoms talk. My God, that game would be musty, especially if you held that one in Baton Rouge.
Oh man, filled to the rim. Week 0, whatever, first week, second week. Oh man.
Yeah, that would be fun. But Coach, man, last thing, potential dark horses in 2024. and we can keep it at the HBCU level. If you have an FCS one or have an independent school, Tennessee State, A&T, or Hampton that intrigues you, you could go that way too. But who are some of your potential dark horses in 2024?
East again. I don't know if it's a dark horse, but I think the Alabama State Hornets from the East. I think from the West, you've got to talk about us, even though no one is, which is good. And then I think Morgan. I just think if Morgan can find a way to get to 13, they are the dark horse to win that conference just because of the way they play defense. And I know no team is the same from year to year, but the way that Coach AC is able to get those guys to play no matter where he is year after year, if they can find a way to get to 13, they've got to be it.
I think Bethune-Cookman, I kind of talked about it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that team is going to be extremely scary for some people, especially if they can get off on the right foot, even though the first part of their schedule is pretty difficult. But they get all their big games at home, get a returning quarterback, you get some really good weapons out of the portal, your secondary is upgraded. I think that Bethune-Cookman team is terrifying. And I've talked to some MEAC people, and I don't think people understand how successful Bethune-Cookman was in the MEAC. Like all people think about is kind of the Bethune-Cookman we've gotten in the SWAC the past few years. Bethune-Cookman was a tough place to win when they were in the MEAC. And so I think they're on the come up. I think Bethune-Cookman would be my sleeper in the East. In the West is tough, man, because I think of sleeper as someone who isn't projected to win the conference. And the only two teams that aren't projected to win the conference are UAPB and Texas Southern. Like, you can make an argument again for a majority of these teams, maybe exclude Grambling. I mean, if you're just saying sleeper in general, because I think Alcorn and I'll be honest, Coach, I think looking at the conference, I won't be surprised if it's you guys are PV. We're getting those first place votes at SWAC Media Day if I had to really project it. So I guess just by default, Southern would be the dark horse there, because I do think Southern's talented enough to compete for that division. And in terms of the MEAC, Morgan's there just because of their defense, but I'm gonna say I think Norfolk. Oh, you know what? No, I'm going here. I'm going South Carolina State.
Ooh,
I think
first year.
First year, I think Chennis Berry brought a lot of talented players with them from Benedict. I think they return arguably the best offensive line in HBCU football, at least one of the top 2 or 3 offensive lines in HBCU football, one of the better ones in FCS, I think, as well. I think South Carolina State, as long as they get the quarterback decision correct, they're going to cause a lot of problems for people. And you look across the MEAC, you can't trust Morgan offensively. Norfolk has yet to prove they can win big games. Howard's losing a starting quarterback, and they got a lot of pieces coming back, but they're losing a lot on the offensive line. They're losing the starting quarterback. Going to have to replace them in their front 7. You look at Delaware State. I don't think they're there to compete yet. And then Central's going to have to break in a new quarterback.
Yeah.
And they're going to have some front 7 pieces to potentially replace. I think if you look at a dark horse pick, I think it's South Carolina State there. And I see people asking, I define dark horse as someone who isn't going to be voted high in the preseason. So therefore, I can't pick Alabama State because I think Alabama State is going to be the preseason favorite.
They should be.
FAMU, but FAMU just won the conference. They can't be a dark horse. And Jackson has won 2 out of the last 3 SWAC championships, and is probably going to be a top 3 team projected, receive some first place votes after last year. I
say Alabama State because in my book, to me, FAM won it. You can't come back and not put them number 1 in preseason. But stranger things have happened in the voting. But I just feel like you leave as the man, you come back as the man, regardless. Now, like I said, stranger things have happened in the conference, but I think FAM is the favorite. They've got to be voted as a favorite. Um, they want it.
You see, oh man, now this is a whole nother debate. Let me finish real quick. So in the East, like I already said, I think the only two people you can't pick as dark horses in the East is PV. They've won what, like 2 out of the last 3 or 3 out of the last 4, something like that, division titles. You can't pick PV as a dark horse. Then you can't pick. I don't think you can pick Alcorn as a dark horse. They've been 1 game away for 2 years. They're going to be a top 2 team in preseason. I think Southern and Grambling is going to be interesting with how they voted with first year head coaches. I just think Southern has way more talent than Grambling right now on both sides of the football. So I think they would be the only dark horsey pick there, because the other, I can't trust any of the other teams. But you're not going to find me saying UAPB is going to be a dark horse and win the West. Just no way I'm saying that right now. Same for Texas Southern. I don't think they're going to be very good, and I've already expressed why I don't think Grambling's going to be ready. And then in the MEAC, I think you can't pick Howard. They just won it. Central was just a playoff team. So you could pick anybody but Central and Howard in the MEAC for dark horses. Is how I feel about it. So I think I give South Carolina State the edge, just because I just can't trust Morgan's offense. I just can't, man. Like, that offense was historically bad, and I think, even though I love the defense, I until I see an offense, man, I can't trust Morgan this year. So yeah, that's why I saw some people like, why aren't you picking my team? I think Jackson and Bama State, those went, because like, if they won the conference, would anybody be like, oh my God, I can't believe Bama State or Jackson won the East? I don't think anyone would be surprised.
It's been a minute since Bama State won it, though.
That it is. I'll give you that. But you look at Bama State, they beat Jackson last year. They've been what, one play, a hand, 1 or 2 plays away from beating FAM for 2 years now. I look at it. Okay, so if I had to predict right now, preseason votes, and obviously I don't get a vote. I just want to put that out there. I do not vote in any preseason stuff other than what y'all see on my website. Don't vote in SWAC Media Day. In SWAC Media Day, I expect FAM to receive first place votes. I expect Bama State to receive first place votes, and I expect Jackson to receive first place votes in the East. I think it's going to be split, and I think FAM or Bama State are going to be number 1. I would lean Bama State now. And in the other side, man, in the West, shit, PV, Alcorn, and I think Southern will receive some. Possibly. It'd probably be Alcorn, PV, because they screw. I don't. Oh man, the West. I don't know. I'm just going to say that because, Coach, do you remember, was PV 5th last year?
Fourth, maybe.
I think they were 5th. I think they put Grambling over PV last year. That's tough. That's a bad read by whoever votes for that. And in the MEAC, I think Howard is probably going to be unanimous. Maybe Central getting some votes, but I do think Central's going. I don't consider Central a dark horse just because they just won it 2 years ago now. Plus, they were just in the playoffs, man. Like, you can't be a dark horse team and have a damn playoff appearance on your resume from last year, which you should have won if Davius Richard doesn't get hurt. So that's just my thinking on dark horses. Now, y'all can have y'all's own criteria. Coach, let me ask you, because obviously I vote for the FCS top 25, and there's a major debate with this. I think it trickles down to conference preseason voting. Do you think the national champion deserves to be number 1 until they lose?
Yes. You left on top of the hill, man. That's just me. That's always been my deal. It always amazes me when we're talking about like the Power Five, when uh, you leave as the national champ and then you come back and they have you ranked 10th. Give me a chance to lose. I know I
Okay.
just lost Joe Burrow. I know I just lost Chase. I know I just lost Jefferson, but I have other people here as well. Give me a chance to lose. I mean, I left as number 1. That's always been
Oh
my
man.
thinking.
Ah, I'm with you if it's the first poll. Okay,
Yes,
so
I mean,
but
yeah.
when I submit my ballot, whenever I think our preseason we got to submit it in like late July, August, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I'm voting South Dakota State number one, for obvious
As you
reasons.
should.
Yeah, because they're not only national champs, they're back to back national champs. But if they come out week one and they don't look good,
It takes care of
I would
itself.
I would consider moving them down, even if they don't lose.
Now, if they don't lose, I mean, if they win and
Okay.
don't look good, I mean, they've got to stay there. Now, if they
How
lose, it works itself out. But I just,
okay. Hang on. I gotta pull up their schedule real quick. I don't remember who they play week one. I want to say it might be a D2 team. So this could be a pointless conversation. Hang on. Because they might have like Western Oregon or somebody number one. Um, hang on real quick. Because I want to this is a thing I've thought about with my ballot because this could actually happen. Oh man. Their website's so slow right now. This is crazy. Okay. Oh, here we go. So they play at Oklahoma State week one, which that's they played a D2 school last year. Um, North Dakota State plays at Colorado week one. They're probably, I'll just tell you, South Dakota State's going to be one for me. North Dakota State's going to be two with what they have returning. If if North Dakota State goes and beats Colorado on national TV, big noon kickoff with everything Dion brought in, and South Dakota State gets beat 45-7 by Oklahoma State, does North Dakota State not have an argument to be number one?
but that goes to the argument of playing up. Should that hurt me or should that help me?
Let's just say, okay, so let's just say
Because
this.
if I
Okay, you
get
don't
beat, if they both get beat, one loses by 7, the other one gets boat race.
like, okay, so let's take it like this. You don't move South Dakota State down. They lose to Oklahoma State. North Dakota State beats Colorado. Week 2, South Dakota State struggles at home against Incarnate Word. I'll talk about takes a last second victory dominant against I think it's Tennessee State week 2. How many games of struggle at the FCS level would it take for you to move North Dakota State above South Dakota State?
If they keep winning.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me.
If they keep winning.
That's so
They
because
didn't lose. They won. The name of the game is to win. And it goes back to our argument before. Does a 1-point win hurt me more than me blowing somebody out? I still won. Ah,
okay,
ah.
here's where I'm sitting. I'm not going to penalize South Dakota State for losing to Oklahoma State. Just want to put that out there before that goes viral for the wrong reasons. I'm just saying, okay, so let's go to week 4 here. North Dakota State has a win at Colorado, a win over Tennessee State, a win on the road against ETSU, and they go and beat Townsend for homecoming. That's 4 Division I wins with a Power 5 upset. South Dakota State loses to Oklahoma State, wins a close one with Incarnate Word, beats a D2 opponent in week 3, which shouldn't really count, and they struggle against Southeastern Louisiana on the road in week 4, which was a 3-win team. You're saying a 3-1 South Dakota State stays and they haven't looked like the number 1 team in the country?
They
When you
won.
got a team with 4 Division I wins and a Power 5 win versus a team with only 3 wins with only, I guess, only 2 wins at the Division I level because they have a D2 loss. I mean, a D2 win. My bad.
Does the Power 5 loss hurt?
No, I'm not saying the Power
No,
5
I'm
loss isn't
saying
what I'm hung
the
up on.
Power
Okay, let's
5.
take the Power 5 game
No,
out of it for South Dakota State. Let's say they played.
you broke. I didn't hear that. You broke up on it. You broke up on me. I didn't hear that.
Say that again.
You broke up on me. I didn't hear that.
Okay, so I'm
You
just
take the
saying,
Power Five
take
out.
the
They played
Oklahoma
who?
State.
B, what happened? I lost you.
I'm back now.
Okay.
Got you. Okay, my bad. But my thing was, let's take the Power Five game out for South Dakota State because that's kind of messing up the conversation. That's not what I wanted to focus on. What I wanted
Okay.
to let's say they play Alcorn State week 1. They they go 4-0, but they don't look impressive in any of them, and they win like a handful by 3 or 4 points, whatever, like that. North Dakota State beats a Power Five team in Colorado, and I'm talking about blows ETSU, Tennessee State, and Towson out the water. You still are going to rank them number 1 based on last season rather than the results of this season.
They won every game though, right?
But I can't judge them off of last year's resume. Resume would be my argument. I have to judge you. I can't say South Dakota State won 20 somethings consecutive games going back to 2 years ago. I have to say, are they the number 1 team in 2024 after 4 games this year?
And they've won every game in 2024.
But if you looked at their resume, who had the best 4 wins?
They started as number one.
That's
How do you
so
get dropped from
crazy.
being number one and you don't lose?
Because preseason predict that's the whole you see
Argument
that
about preseason polls. But
yeah,
if
that's
I
the whole
start number one and through 4 weeks I haven't lost, how can you drop me? You can't. I've won. I've done everything. That goes back to the Florida State thing. All I did was win. Well, you didn't have your quarterback, blah, blah, blah. But we won. What does it matter? I should be ranked even higher because I won without my starting quarterback. I won without my number 2 quarterback. You should be thrusting me up, not bringing me down.
oh my goodness. It's just it's you see, and that's why I think preseason polls are one dumb because I get why we have to do them, the clicks, and you got to have a starting spot eventually. But I just like for me, so I've talked about this on the show. I think you should if we could start voting in week 4, it would make way more sense. Because the only thing I can base preseason on is last season and just my general assumptions on how good you're going to be this year. Because it's kind of, I'll say this because this is where people get caught up. And because we talked about this last year with Western Carolina, they were unranked. Samford was like 6th in the country or 7th in the country. They beat Samford. Western Carolina skyrockets in a lot of people's polls, including myself. By the end of the season, Western Carolina is not a playoff team, mostly due to injuries, and that's a whole debatable topic. But at the end of the day, they didn't make the postseason, and Samford finished with a losing record. So does that win really hold? Like, should we have skyrocketed Western Carolina for beating a team that obviously wasn't the number 7 team in the country?
But at the end of the day, did it not work out?
To a point, I think it did because I mean Western Carolina had a run there, and then obviously they kind of fell off the cliff after. It all eventually works out. I think the only people who really kind of get upset about it to a point during the season are the fans because the and I think it goes back, coach, because I mean our debate kind of perfectly correlates with what happened with Montana last year. Montana was 4-0, and they dropped in a lot of people's polls consistently. Some people took them out the top 25 completely, and that's the team that ended up going to the national championship. So it's kind of a whole thing of, if you got your preseason poll and someone loses, like, obviously you got to adjust it, but how much weight do you put into your preseason predictions based on the on-field results? Do you only look at wins and losses, or when do you start having to be when do you start having to kind of like weed through the fine hairs of, was this an impressive win or was this a bad win, and stuff like that? Because me and you talked about this. At the end of the day, for the playoff committee and in my week 12 and 11 poll, that matters, is how impressive you look in a win. What week do you think it's appropriate to, I guess, split those fine hairs between 1 versus 2 or 3 versus 4? Or even last year, there was a time, Coach, I went ahead and wrote South Dakota State and Penn in number 1 on my bracket because I knew it wasn't changing. But like the difference between like 2 and 9 was so thin that like you had to like be like, oh, well, they won this game by 21 points, but this team won by 23. So you got to put this team above this team. How soon do you think voters need to start splitting hairs?
I think in the FCS category, I think it becomes uh, week 9-ish, somewhere around in there, because you have to narrow it down and get to the field. But I'm going to throw it back at you this way. So you're telling me that I start at number 1. All I do is win.
Yeah.
Number 2, they're winning. We're playing like opponents. I may be winning by 4. They may be winning by 12. They jump me.
Depending on the week, yeah.
Ugh, it's nasty work.
I mean, I know
It's nasty
it's
work.
tough. It's nasty work. It's my God, thanks for saying it's nasty work. I mean, here's the position I'm in. If I just leave it chalk, like, yes, it's an undefeated team, they don't move, but then the argument is going to be like, oh, are you watching the games? Like, have you seen this team struggle?
Yes, you got to. Yes, that's our thing. You've got to watch. You can't just go to the newspaper and look at the score.
Yeah,
I'm winning. I'm not getting dominated. I'm not winning off fluke plays. I'm controlling the game. I'm winning. Hey, they're doing the same thing. I may not be as flashy. So now you're telling me we need to get back to the BCS days of where if I can beat Bluebloods University by 50, I need to do that.
To a point, kind of, but it's more of the quality opponent you beat was what the point I was trying to make. If you got a team, so let's take the resumes off. Like let's take the resume.
I can only play what's in my conference. So if you're in another conference, you're in the SEC, I'm in the ACC, everybody that's lined up for me to play, I play and I beat them. You do the same. So now, okay, I can lend to well, my conference is not as strong as your conference, whatever. But I can't totally knock you for that because that's who you play.
I agree with. So this is a unique situation. We might need to switch up the schools because these two teams play in the same conference. So eventually they would have to play each other, and they play the same.
And that would work it out.
I'm more looking at like the out of conference schedule, which to a point now. I'm not saying they have full control over it because obviously schedule's got to match, money's got to match. You have decisions that you can make for your out of conference schedule. You control that to a point.
Years.
Yes, years in advance. Now, so let's just take it to the HBCU realm. We don't do like a top 10 HBCU poll, but I think is it box to row Is
Mhm.
Box Row and Dr. Cavill have their HBCU posts? HBCU Nightly has theirs. Preseason, you're saying FAM's got to be number one, right?
Definitely.
In the preseason. Okay, so you got FAM, and then who do you want to put two? Alabama State. Let's go with them. Um, so you think FAM's got to stay number one until Alabama
But
State beats them in conference, or
yeah,
FAMU slips up against the non P5?
till they lose. All they've done is
Oh
won.
shit!
All they've done is won. You can't penalize me for
I
losing. I mean, for
I
winning, all I've done
oh,
is won.
I get it. I get it to a point. It's just I think when once the resume, so I'm thinking you don't make a move till probably week 3 or 4 for me is kind of when I would take a risk like that. But if I'm sitting in week 4 and I got, let's just say team A, because I already see EA and everyone in here, getting behind the FAMU rally. Let's just say team A, coach, you were preseason number one. You're sitting at, let's just say 5-0, but you've 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 beat a Division two, and you got 4 wins by single digits where you were turning the football over, you were inefficient playing, but you escaped with wins against 4 Division 1 non-conference opponents, and you got a D2 win where you looked okay in, but it was a Division 2 game. Then you got a team who's sitting at 5-0. They upset an FBS opponent. They got 3 ranked wins on their resume, and then they beat their lower non-conference school by like 25. They've looked impressive all week. They got Walter Payton leading quarterback behind them. They've looked impressive. They look like the number one team in the country. For you, the team that has all those ranked wins in the FBS upset cannot jump the team with a D2 win and 4 struggle wins until they lose.
So we're saying D2 hurts me.
Yes, absolutely. It hurts you.
So an FBS loss doesn't hurt me.
No.
Okay. I won. I didn't lose, right? I won.
Oh man.
Now, I played down to my competition, no doubt. We should have beat Lincoln by 70. We beat them by 40. We still won the game.
I mean, before we establish anything, in your poll, if you were a voter for the FCS top 25, if a team beat a D2 school and a team lost to a Power 5 team, would you flip those teams?
No, because to me,
It's
the
different,
only
right?
way the only way a D2 thing to me comes to factor, and this is me, solely on these shoulders, is if I go out there and I freaking lose. Now, okay, get to the back. But if you win, I just don't think a team should be penalized for winning. That's the name of the game. We always say, whether it by 1 or by 50, you won. At the
That's
end of the
fair.
day.
I think either way is fair. It's just, I guess it's just we have differing opinions on when you have to start splitting hairs. So I mean, I don't mind it. Like I personally don't mind people who do it like that. Just for me,
But the thing is, to me, and it goes back to something we've always talked about, that we've talked about off camera and the whole nine. When you're doing this, you really have to put the time in, and you have to watch the games. You can't go
you know,
by the score, whatever, whatever. You got to watch the games, especially when we talk about our level because it's seeding and things like that.
yeah,
Um, if we're simply just throwing 25 teams out there, of course, it's not going to be 25 undefeated. But that's not the case. If that was the case, then cool. I could open up the newspaper. I could go through the scores, team A1, team B1, team C1, and that's how we go according to that. But in August, I start number one, and all I do is win all the way into November. I don't see how I get jumped. I won.
That's fair. Listen, I just think, well, that's what we found a new disagreement on the show. I'll be very interested to see people's comments on that one. I mean, hell, we're like 2 hours and 20 minutes in. So if you made it this far, definitely comment and let us know your opinion on whether the preseason number one should stay number one until they lose, or should it be evaluated week to week and based on their performance move accordingly. I'm trying to think, because I mean, last year was so different because last year's tough to kind of evaluate because South Dakota State went wire to wire, and I don't think there was a voter in the country that really thought they weren't the number one team in the country. They might have been a consensus number one for the whole season, to be honest.
When Sac State beat Stanford, according to your logic, Sac State should have shot up.
They did shoot up in my poll.
They
jumped into like the top 10 in mine.
That's Power 5.
Like, hang on, I could tell you. Hang on, I got this because I want, because you see this is the reason why voters should have to post their polls, because I can tell you exactly what I did, like week to week voting wise. I gotta find it real quick. I gotta find my preseason one.
You don't have to be that thorough. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, no,
we don't want to expose anything. I'm just saying.
Oh no, I'm not. Listen, I posted it on the web for a reason, because I think more voters should be open to posting their ballots. Yeah, you gotta have some sort of transparency with what you're doing. Let's see. I might have a picture of it on my profile rather than having to find the damn article. But I do know, so after Sac State's win, they shot up, because that was that week 3-ish, I think. Was week 3 was when they had that. I'm pretty sure it was week 3 when they had that upset. Let's see, FCS top 25. I'm trying to think the last time I had a different number one team, to be honest with you, Coach. Because we've had, let's see. Okay, no, last year was 2023, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see if I can find my week 4 poll now. Okay, so week 3 ballot here. It's compared to my preseason. Let's see. I jumped Sacramento State from number 10 to number 5 after beating Stanford. So they jumped Incarnate Word, who was 2-1. The loss was an FBS loss. Weber State was 2-1. They lost to Utah. They jumped Furman, who was 2-1, FBS loss. They jumped undefeated William and Mary, who that week only beat Charleston Southern 15-7. They jumped Holy Cross, who was 2-1. They had that loss to, what was it, Boston College, I want to say was their FBS game.
Yep.
And then they were number 5.
I feel bad for William and Mary because all they did was win.
And then they until they didn't. And then the wheels fell off for William and Mary. So, because I mean,
it worked itself. So
this is this is what you're aggravated about. So William and Mary is actually the perfect example, because this is my week 3 ballot. William and Mary dropped from 4 to 7 from preseason to week 3 ballot, and they were 3-0.
But all they did was win, man.
They did. So I feel your pain on that. And I mean, so a good example, because so Coach, I've told you this off camera. I've said this on the show. Every single week from week 1 to about week 6, I erase my ballot completely. And I rank teams just over again based on what they did this year. So like Southern Illinois coming into the year was not a top 25 team for me. They beat a ranked team in SEMO. They had, if I'm not mistaken, in like, who did Southern Illinois beat for the first 3 weeks? I want to say they had like a FBS win, 2 ranked wins. They went from unranked to number 11 for me over the first 3 weeks, just based on what they did. So
But
for
but
my problem,
somebody had to lose in order for you to be able to do that.
I
That's
feel
all
you.
I'm
Listen,
saying, man. That's
I
all I'm
got
saying.
you. Listen, so we just disagree on that. So here's the reason I started doing that, man, because I know Sam Herder and some other people do it as well. The thing that bothers me the most is, and coach, me and you debated this all season long last year. Teams that would win and not move up. Like the Western Carolinas, people would be hesitant to move them up because they were given teams who weren't. So, coach, I want to put it in perspective. They beat Austin P 49-23 team, won their conference. They upset Northern Illinois on the road, an FBS win, and they beat SEMO on the road, who was the number 13 team in the country in week 3. He had 2 ranked wins and an FBS win, and they were unranked to start the season. But to me, that resume was enough to jump them into the top 15.
Definitely. And they should have been ahead of who was that? Sanford, because they beat them. Um, was it Sanford?
Who, Western Carolina?
Yeah,
So to put it in perspective, too, Western Carolina in this poll was number 13 for me.
right. And I know some
So
folks still had Sanford ahead of them,
yes.
even though they beat them and it wasn't even close.
So Sanford was number 8 in my rankings, and in this week's rankings they were 20th. So they dropped a whole lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like that's the toughest because I'm looking here like you. There was a lot of teams who I'm trying to see who like really fell in these rankings for people to like get a sense of like where I was with it. So like SEMO dropped a lot. So North Carolina Central was 2-1 at this time, coach. They who all did they beat? Because this was the week that they lost to UCLA. Um and they had, I want to say they beat Winston-Salem State. Yeah, they beat Winston-Salem State. They beat A&T and lost to UCLA. In my opinion, a D2 loss is not better than what some other teams were doing. So Western Carolina and Southern Illinois both jumped North Carolina Central, who at that point had lost a D1 game.
I get it.
Central went from 13 to 17 in the first 3 weeks of the season.
I guess that's the part I don't get. I
Dropping
win.
to,
I win
yeah,
and I still drop. I don't get that. I don't know how that works.
I feel
Especially
you.
from the
Listen, I
top
get it.
spot. Especially from the top spot.
The
I
top
start in the
spot
pole
is,
position.
yeah,
I don't lose. How do I not stay in the pole position?
I get it. Listen, the top spot's a lot tougher. I think there's a better argument because usually the number 1 team in the country isn't just a complete bust, but it's those teams, what, coach, like 8 through like 20
Nice
ish.
game.
Dude, the variability between those teams, like the variance
Yeah.
in those teams are so ridiculous. So, like, I get the top team argument. That's why I said I don't mind voters who do that because there's a lot of voters who agree with you. It's just if I'm gonna like the thing that concerns me as a voter, because I like to be transparent, is I don't want to use different scales to judge teams, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
if I'm not going to drop a South Dakota State and North Dakota State from number 1 for not losing, despite the variance being different in the middle of the top 25, how do I use that same argument to move a Southern Illinois with an FBS win and 2 ranked wins above a Central who beat a D2 team, a team that won 1 game last year and lost an FBS game? That's where it gets so tricky. And that's why I think it's good that all these polls have like 60 plus voters and everyone kind of has their different ideas and it all kind of works out at the end, except when you have, the coaches poll, which never works in any situation ever. But
I'll start my own poll.
hey, you got to let me know. We got to know if Coach Said is a voter this year, because he's got to let you fill out his bracket.
Oh, he probably will. He probably would definitely let me do that. But I'm gonna start my own HBCU poll. Uh, unofficial, but official. Official. Yeah, I'm gonna start my own.
We'll have to do that. I think that'll be a new segment we introduce this year because we already kind of talk about the FCS top 25. I like I already submit my top 10 for HBCU nightly. So what we'll do is we'll just bring a top 10 HBCU ranking on the recap show, whether that's Sunday or Monday night, and we'll do it like that. We'll go over the top 25, we'll go over our HBCU top 10, and we'll give a recap of some of the biggest games
And then you
this
got to
year.
make sure you have that thing where it plays at the express written what how does it go? Yeah, there's solely my opinions. You know
Yeah.
those things that they do at midnight on television. Solely my
It
opinion.
it does crack me up because preseason polls were created for fans because fans wanted them.
Yeah,
And I
something to
see
do.
and I see more fans complain that media outlets do polls than anything. And it's like, you're the reason this is a thing. So how are you complaining when you are the reason that this is an actual thing that happens every year?
I'm gonna get to work on mine, man. I am. It's gonna be Swag Miak, and I'm gonna start a top 10. How many honorable mentions should I have in there? You know, also receiving votes.
So what? It's 18. Are you including the independents?
Yes,
Okay, so what? You got 6 MEAC, 12 SWAC. That's
A and
18. You got
T,
3 independents, so 21
A and T,
teams
Tennessee State, and
in Hampton.
Hampton. Yep.
So 21. So you probably do a top 10 with like 2 honorable mentions.
Also receiving votes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, or also receiving votes.
Yep.
Um, yeah, we'll definitely do that, man. I think I did it in 2022. I didn't do it last year. Like I did a preseason HBCU top 10. Um, and I didn't keep up with it. I need to keep up with an HBCU top 10 this year. So that'll be a good time. And
I got
we'll
it.
do yeah, well, we'll do it
I
on the
got it.
show. We'll put it on the website too. We'll put it with the FCS poll each
And
week.
yes, I'm going to be biased. I just want to get
Alcorn
that out there
State.
now.
Alcorn State's just locked into the number one spot all year long until they lose.
Right now, I'm thinking preseason wise, by my own metric, you know, FAM has to be number one.
Are you putting
Uh,
PV number two?
no, did you not see that championship game?
But they won the division. So
No,
unless
no, 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 no,
somebody from the East is above them, you got to put them. You can't put anybody in the West above them by the metric. That's the problem.
Yeah. We both tied for first place. We have the better record, no doubt. Yeah, that's how that's gonna go.
Oh man, I'm
But
dead.
no,
Yeah, that's
we
fair.
starting with one and working down. I know FAM is gonna be number one. Uh, like you said, because of my metric. Um, number two, I would have to go with the other championship game participant, just
Howard.
because. Yeah, just because. And then 3 through 10, I'm gonna work it out. But that's the top two right now, preseason.
Listen, I'm just gonna say, just be prepared for chaos, man. Just be prepared because,
Oh
but
yeah, on the shoulders,
it
baby.
oh yeah, no, it's something else with these polls, man.
But you know
People,
what? We're gonna do that in the lounge. Yeah, we're not
ooh,
gonna bring it here. We'll do that in the lounge. Yeah, the lounge top 10. Yep, that's how we're gonna do it.
I like it. I like it. But guys, man, I appreciate y'all tuning in, man. Listen, we've been going for a little bit just due to various
Sorry
things,
about
like I
that.
mentioned earlier. But man, we're gonna get this thing kicked. Listen, after Coach's spring game, we're gonna be rolling again. We got a lot of we got a lot of guests lined up for the Coaches Corner, the Coaches Lounge. Man, we got a lot of content rolling in. Should be down in Alcorn, or I guess up in Alcorn for the spring game on Saturday. Um, Me and Coach will have some stuff planned for that. So stay tuned for everything
Yeah,
out of Loring
yeah.
this weekend. But guys, hit the like button, subscribe, check out the website, si.com/college/FCS. But for myself, my guy, Coach Fred, man, we are out for right now.